Hello, this is Storybooks channel. New videos are posted every day. Subscribe and click the bell.
Camille looked anxiously at her granddaughter. The elderly woman's excitement was so strong that she involuntarily moved the hand that was tightened by the cuffs. But the house doctor of all strictness is an elementary school teacher, Granny remarked. I asked you to lie still, and your hands are twitching. I'll have to go over it again. The patient made an expressive gesture, which eloquently spoke her displeasure. What to waste time if everything is clear? There was both despair and indignation in the older woman's voice, but Emily had long since gotten used to her grandmother's maneuvers. Paying no attention to the size of the old woman, she again pumped to the limit of the cuffs. Camille for the propriety of it and swayed, but she did not express in verbal form her feelings. She watched her granddaughter's actions, expecting a death sentence, but Emily did not justify these hopes. Grandma, can you be put on the astronaut team? 130/80. That's like a well-trained athlete, and that's at your 80s with a little tail. Camille didn't like her granddaughter's tone, not to mention the result of the study. By pretending to be gravely ill, she changed from horizontal to sitting. Your machine is lying. You can throw it away. Too bad mine broke at the wrong time. But it was always right. I can tell from my condition that my upper blood pressure is at least 200. Emily had an excellent grasp on the intricacies of her grandmother's personality and wasn't even offended by her assessment of the imported device's abilities. Okay, if you don't trust me, let me call an ambulance. Camille's face changed instantly. Her entire large body expressed outrage. With a kind of bloodthirsty triumph in her voice, she declared, "You're where the dog is buried. I knew it. I sensed you were your mother. So you want to put me in the hospital to be finally killed." Emily laughed. "Grandma, hospitals treat people, and you're telling me these stories. And the fact that your mom and I are trying to talk some sense into you is a sign of caring. You have no idea how much we love you." The granddaughter hugged the woman tightly and kissed her deeply wrinkled cheeks. Camille was touched. More than anything else in the world, she treasured such moments. The weight of the years had left many wounds on the heart of the old lady, and not all of them had healed completely, so she wanted her family to pay more attention to her. Today, too, towards morning, she felt uncomfortable with the loneliness of people watching from every corner. At such moments, she became very frightened. That was why she had called Emily. But the girl did not even reproach her relative for such an early call. Remembering it now, Camille decided to apologize. "Emily, I'm sorry I got you up at 6 o'clock, but I thought the woman with the scythe was already at the bedside. I know it's time to get ready, but I just want to live a little longer. It's okay. It's okay. I have to be at work by 8 o'clock anyway. I don't like your moodiness. They say that as long as a man lives, he should think about life. Yes, I try to think, but when I look in the mirror, I get scared." Camille was obviously being flirtatious because she looked quite good for her age. Despite her old age, the woman looked after herself and liked new outfits. Her daughter and granddaughter tried to prevent her every wish, and Evelyn, Emily's mother, many times offered to move into her spacious apartment, but insistent, and the grandmother categorically rejected such a possibility. "I've never lived and I want to die in my own apartment. Stephen and I earned these square meters with our own labor." Camille liked to make her life an example to others. She used every opportunity to involve the interlocutor in her memories. While Emily was preparing breakfast in the kitchen, her grandmother did not miss the opportunity. If you knew granddaughter, what hard times were then. Hunger, devastation, unsettledness. People were happy because they valued life. Now they value money more. Emily with a tray floated into the small living room already. "Let's have breakfast. I'm really going to be late for work. You young people, all in a hurry. Where are you running to? You get married in a hurry, and then you get divorced. Emily, tell me, will I have great-grandchildren?" A conversation on the subject. It's not the first time Grandma started it, but the girl always shrugged it off. To give you great-grandchildren, I need to at least marry first. Camille set the cup aside. She gave her granddaughter a curious look. So why the case? It's not that we've lost all the men in Russia. Your grandfather, Stephen, came back from the war without one leg, and there was no shortage of brides. But your grandfather chose you, not without pride. The old woman said who else could he choose but a labor striker? I have so many diplomas, and even have awards from the government. In those days, girls like that were valued. And your grandfather, despite his disability, was still a crucible and looked at other women. So I had to be on my guard all the time. Emily knew Grandma's love story well, but every time new details came out, Camille had never said before that Stephen had a weakness for the female sex. You never told me about Grandpa's adventures, Grandma. There was a heavy sigh. You don't talk bad about the dead. He drank my blood, your grandfather. But I still loved him and forgave him. It's easy now. Anything wrong, and we're on opposite sides. We put up with it because we were ashamed. We also felt sorry for the kids. Stephen set up 3 of them at once. The women at the construction site laughed at me, saying, Camille, do you go to the maternity hospital like a job? Every year at almost the same time. That was our life, and we loved for real. Emily looked at the old walkers, which inexorably counted the minutes. Of course, Grandma, it's always nice to talk to you, but I don't want to be late for work. Don't worry about me. I want to tell you in confidence that maybe soon your wish will come true. Camille stood up cheerfully, forgetting her hypertension. Is it Emily? Tell me, who is he? Do you know what I mean? What's not to understand? Just make sure you don't tell anyone yet. The old lady winked conspiratorially. I won't. But I don't know what we'll get with John yet. He's a simple and very kind guy. He and I have been dating for almost a year now. And my mother and father know about it. Bah, I told you, you're the first person I shared my secret with. The girl quickly cleared the table and was about to leave. But having remembered something important, Grandma stopped. Why do you want to wait for your great-grandchildren? Camille sighed again very expressively. I don't know if it's true or not, but they say that a woman who is lucky enough to have great-grandchildren is forgiven all her sins. Emily laughed. I had no idea you were superstitious. That's news to me. And believing in omens doesn't add up. Life is such a thing that sometimes incompatible things happen. Whoever thought the world would turn this way before? Emily walked to the bus stop, and the last of her grandmother's remarks never left her mind. About the world being upside down. Mentally, she recognized the old lady's rightness, because really, just in the last few years things had changed a lot. Therefore, many people were still trying to preserve all the good and good that united them before. Barely the girl crossed the threshold of the office, in which 12 employees managed to coexist peacefully, as Jenna immediately at her for, "Why are you late?" "I was just getting there." "Good thing I didn't notice you were gone." "Why are you like that?" The friend tried to gesture. "What's so surprising about Emily?" She, in turn, asked what so. "You can elaborate, but only brides shine like that. And Christmas trees. What kind of day is today?" "First my grandmother asks me early in the morning when I'm getting married. And now you." "Okay, fine. I'll give you the latest information. I'm not planning a wedding just yet. I might be a Christmas tree, though." "You're kidding. I'm not gonna let you go. I know you and John are serious, so I'm hoping to be your maid of honor at your wedding, even if it's just for someone else's happiness." A little bit warmed the desks, and girlfriends stood flush to each other, which allowed them to secretly, without attracting the attention of all that accounting. Emily moved even closer to Jenna. "I don't get it. I thought you and Christopher were fine. To be honest, I was kind of jealous." "Well, girlfriend, love is over. Tomatoes are wilted." "What was the reason? Did he lie to you or betray you?" "No, it would take a lot of effort to lie to me. It's just that times are tough with my girlfriend, and Christopher's been scraping by on odd jobs. And I'm a young and beautiful girl, and I want a party. And preferably every day." That confession shocked Emily. What about love? Jenna looked at her friend as if she was seeing her for the first time. I didn't realize you were so naive. Love is being able to satisfy your little whims at someone else's expense. That's why I resigned, Christopher. Your John is different. You know, he's got a sense of class. Even though he's still a young man. It's weird. I thought you understood all that. That's why you're together. Emily didn't like her friend judging her boyfriend like he was a horse instead of a human being. Jenna, let's switch to work, or you and I will get cut for talking. The girl squirmed, laying down funny, but took her friend's advice. After this conversation, Emily had an unpleasant residue on her soul, but Jenna was not at all embarrassed by her friend's changed mood and her unwillingness to return to this topic. At the end of the day, she asked to be a counselor. It's so boring alone. Let's go for a walk together. Emily was uncomfortable saying no to her best friend, and she agreed to such a plan, though not very willingly. Emily had very different plans for the evening, and knowing Jenna, she knew it would be for a long time. Okay, Chuckles, I'll try to comfort you a little, but John will be waiting for me. He and I were gonna go to the movies. Jenna clapped happily. Mittens and Snowflake, yay. I haven't been to a movie in 100 years. Emily, I didn't have time to add that the two of them wanted to go together. When John saw Emily show up with her date, he didn't seem surprised, did he? He had met Jenna a few times before, but his first impression of her was negative, so he greeted her rather dryly and looked at Emily expressively. I hadn't counted on another person participating in our cultural event. Otherwise, I would have bought 3 tickets at once. Jenna was not in the least embarrassed by such a clear hint that she was the one. The third extra. The girl laughed very loudly. You can buy a term. True, it would cost 3 times as much, but the matter will be solved. She looked around and then pointed her finger at the guy standing nearby. He was standing there, staring at nothing. He had a hood over his head, his eyes and face blank. John, that man over there definitely has tickets. Young man, surprised Jenna. Are you even informed in such matters? Yes, you are dangerous to be friends with. Jenna smiled contentedly. That's how you need to one too and have an effect. On the contrary, it is very useful to be friends with me. I know this guy because I've bought clothes from him many times. He used to paint rags for a cut. John, please hurry. Emily and I are gonna turn into icicles. It's Arctic cold. Emily hadn't said a word the whole time. She didn't expect her friend to behave so swaggeringly in the presence of her beau. She hadn't noticed Jenna's habits before, such as laughing loudly or pointing her finger at people in public. She even regretted that she hadn't culturally stitched up her friend, for whom she now had to blush in front of John. Somewhere inside, a beacon went off, warning of danger. Watch out, or your best friend will steal your boyfriend. But from the look of John and his mood, it was easy to guess that Jenna annoyed him a lot. During the session, her friend didn't hold back either. She commented aloud on the actions of the characters, and constantly she was cut in her seat. Therefore, Emily thickly and did not watch the picture with the participation of a famous Italian actor. Jenna, on the other hand, had quite a bit. I was so looking forward to seeing this movie. Thank you, John. She looked at him with such eyes. It made Emily uncomfortable. It seemed to her that Jenna had forgotten that John was dating her best friend. One more minute, and she'd just lash out at the guy. You're welcome. Unexpectedly, for a couple of lovers, Jenna fell out friends. I do not understand why you have such faces, as if you just had a spoon, fish, grease. Remember when they used to give us that stuff in kindergarten? Jenna laughed very loudly again. Emily just nodded her head in response to her friend's inappropriate question and wanted to say goodbye as they stood in front of Jenna's house. But she wasn't going to leave them so easily. Guys, I understand, but I'm warning you that I will be your maid of honor at your wedding, and no other candidates will be considered. Are you satisfied that you've made your point tonight? Jenna laughed very loudly again. John wrinkled his nose, but he said calmly, I must disappoint you, Jenna, but Emily and I are not getting married." Instantly, the joy on the face of the girl was replaced by surprise I did not understand. "It turns out that you, John, also give up eating and not even shy to admit it so publicly." The young man very cleverly put the insolent girl in her place, and Emily watched with satisfaction as she tried to realize the meaning of his words, so that the girl would not suffer in vain. He explained Jenna's decision to abandon the noisy celebration does not mean that someone has abandoned someone, especially so you cannot talk about a person, but to say, "And we will be fine and without a loud wedding. We'll just go to the registry office and run away secretly from everyone, and we'll spend the money on something useful." Jenna was hit with another wave of surprise. It's like an American movie. They go on a trip right after Mary, too. "John, you're good." For about 15 minutes, John and Emily had to listen to Jenna's coddling for the sake of decency. The frost was starting to creep through their warm clothes. Toward the end, all three of them were jumping in place to keep warm. Finally, Jenna gave in. Tonight was going to be a good night. Maybe we could go to the restaurant with the same group. When I opened the door at the entrance, the young man breathed a sigh of relief. Emily tried to justify herself for her friend's behavior. "I'm sorry you had to put up with Jenna's jibber-jabber. She's a normal girl. It's just that today she had a meltdown. I didn't expect it to get so ugly. I've never had to deal with anything so special. What I don't understand is what you two have in common. You're so different. Well, there's no mystery. It's just that we went to kindergarten together, and then we sat at the same desk. She's always so reckless. I mean, her dad's a big shot, so Jenna's been used to getting what she wants since she was a diaper. I wish her daddy would teach his daughter some manners. I couldn't help myself when she started asking about our wedding. I really wanted to sass that girl. In fact, she ruined the whole thing for me." "What do you mean?" John stopped and looked into the girl's eyes. "As strange as this may sound, but today was the day I was going to propose to you. But your best friend messed up my plans, so I'll have to limit myself to the standard question in such cases. Sure, yeah, half of the procedure is done. And now part 2. Please, maestro, fanfare." John Fool himself played the orchestra, and then solemnly took a velvet box out of his pocket. A ring, as is proper on such occasions. The girl opened the box in the color of a street lamp, and a bright gem winked cheerfully at her. Oh, it was a real diamond. It was the happiest day of Emily's life. The girl could not sleep for a long time, recounting in her memory every minute of the wonderful evening. On that frosty February night, spring was ringing in her heart, and she believed that the best was yet to come. The first year in married life flew by unnoticed. Emily could not escape the feeling that it was all happening in a dream. The women at work made fun of her. Our Emily was giving off a vibe. You can get a free load of happiness. It's rare to find such a thing in life, that a honeymoon stretches for a whole year. The girl smiled embarrassedly and tried to guffaw. "You just pay too much attention to my person. I've never walked around with a sour face before. I always tried to find positive things, even in a private day." Jenna was the only one who didn't keep everyone's spirits up. She had once again failed in her personal life, and was now openly jealous of her friend's marital happiness. Once, during a lunch break, which they traditionally spent in a nearby cafe, Jenna even made a remark. "In vain you flaunt your prosperous life." The girl was surprised. On the contrary, it always seemed to me that happy people radiate kindness. Personally, I'm ready to share with anyone. How can I understand you, John? Will you rent your own? Jenna, I didn't expect you to say that. If you weren't my friend, I'd definitely be offended. Sometimes I get the impression that you're not happy for me or that I owe you something. Emily almost cried with resentment. So Jenna tried to remedy the situation. "Why are you so sour? You know I'm not being mean." "Well, my tongue is so bad. It's like I'm talking nonsense. No offense, Emily. It's not like I resent you, John, for not getting married." The tension was released, and both girls smiled at the end of the meal when they put down their dessert plates. Jenna asked Emily with a piercing sadness. What is happiness? I guess it's different for each person. You know, I recently came across a collection of poems by a poetess. Anyway, she survived the war. There was love and betrayal in her life. One of her poems struck me. It's about happiness, which this woman had spent her whole life collecting in bits and pieces. But you can't get a lot of happiness that way. It's very beautifully put, though. Yes, beautiful and right. You know, Jenna, my grandmother told me many times about her youth. Grandpa was legless, and she cut her throat for him. I'm sorry, I didn't put it well. But according to the stories of my favorite grandmother, a person was valued before, and it doesn't matter what physical defects he had. It was what was inside that mattered. Jenna looked at Emily with wide-open eyes. Oh, come on, girlfriend. You should not sit in the accounting department and lecture at some liberal arts university. I'm gonna quit accounting soon. What's another surprise? John, you got another job. You could say that. We're about to have a new addition. This news took Jenna by surprise. She hadn't had time to prepare for it internally. And on her handsome pilot flashed a displeased grimace, but quickly pulling herself together, the girl naively became. Emily, I'm so happy for you. I mean for you too. Of course, so much happiness, and in the same hands from it can be crazy. But if I missed your wedding, where I wanted to be a bridesmaid, then at least take me as a godmother. Emily made no promises. At those who returned from a direct answer duty phrases should still give birth, and then think about everything else. By the way, my grandmother used to say that you can't even buy clothes for a baby that hasn't been born. It's a very bad omen. And it seems to me that it's all nonsense. Dumb beliefs, as they say. What to be? That will not pass. Personally, when I get ready for motherhood, I'll prepare everything in advance for the baby. How I envy you now. I want it all too. To calm her friend, Emily advised her to have everything you will definitely have, Jenna. You just have to change your outlook on life a little. A crane in the sky looks more attractive because it is high at a distance and imperfections are not noticeable. I get the hint. But your version of a tit is definitely not going to work for me. It's easy for you to argue because your John has achieved something that others haven't. He's got a good job and a good salary. You're behind him like a wall. And the tit. That's utopia. Whoever can't get to the sky needs help. I'm not ready to be a wall for anyone. Emily was not in the habit of imposing her opinion on others. She decided that there was no point in arguing with her friend about the values of life. After this conversation, their paths began to diverge in different directions. Emily began to avoid eating together in the cafeteria, and Jenna did not insist. Soon the friend was promoted. Jenna decided to celebrate her professional triumph with a bang. Girls on such an occasion, and I do not hide the glade. The meeting place is a campground, Pines outside the city. Please don't be late. After giving out instructions, Jenna approached the table where Emily was sitting. I hope you're not from the college. The staff. But Emily pointed to her belly. Where am I going with a watermelon like that? If it were still here, then I would definitely spend time in warm company. I'm not going out of town. I don't want to take any chances. Well, what do you know? A month before her maternity leave, Emily felt ill. Her legs were severely cut off. Unsightly spots appeared on her face. After conferring with her husband, she decided to take a leave of absence. With application in hand, she entered the supervisor's office without knocking. Jenna, I have to go. Jenna gives her an unfriendly look. First of all, it's not Jenna, it's Jenna. And secondly, cultured people knock before they enter an executive's office. What's going on in there? Although the freshly minted supervisor could see Emily was having trouble standing, she didn't even offer her a chair. On the contrary, she spent several minutes studying the short text of only 2 lines. I'm sorry, but I have to turn you down. The annual report is coming up. You know that. But I have to go on maternity leave in less than a month anyway. So you'll go on vacation like you're supposed to in a month. Emily was on her way out the door when she heard the sarcastic. So how's your happiness going? A lot of it was collecting grains. Don't you want to share? Emily was struck rather not by the words, but by the intonation with which her friend spat out her gloating. But the new boss decided to continue. Now look at you and me and tell me which one of us is happier. You're painful to look at. Sprawled out like a frog. I'm the favorite. Good position, salary, respect. I'm getting used to it, and I'll find a husband. Emily almost physically felt as if the last thread connecting her to her friend had broken. Probably, this breakup had a negative impact on her health, because in the evening of the same day she went to the hospital for preservation. John was very worried about the condition of his spouse and the future child, but the doctor assured everything will be fine. There is no special reason to worry. It's just that your wife was a little nervous. But it'll pass for a while. She'll rest with us and go home in a couple weeks. The doctor wasn't lying. Indeed, Emily was soon discharged, and the doctor made one last joke about parting for a while. Gain strength and come back for the baby. During the time left before the birth, Emily prepared herself for future motherhood. She reread a lot of useful literature, but she liked the book by the famous American pediatrician Benjamin Term. When John caught his wife reading this treatise, he was surprised. I see you're all set, and I'm allowed to study the references. After all, I want to be very involved too. I'm all for it. Here you go. John took the book, but it was obvious that his mind was on something else. Emily decided to help him out. Honey, is there something you wanted to ask me? Is there? Listen, I was at a meeting at City Hall the other day and I was almost speechless when I saw your friend there. I think it was Jenna. Yeah, that's the one. But I don't talk to her anymore. Why is that, if it's no secret? No secret. It's just that even a little bit of power changes a person so much. I see. I'll keep that in mind. Anatoly, I almost invited her to our house. Why didn't you tell me? Why? John, you yourself probably at least once in your life faced a situation when you realized that with some person you are not on the way. That's what happened with Jenna and me. Our friendship turned out to be a bubble, but I don't regret breaking up with her. It's just the bitterness that lingers. It'll pass, especially since you won't have to go back to your accounting department. Have you made up your mind for me? Know that I'd like to suggest a change of career. We're opening some branches soon, and we're gonna need to expand our staff. Okay, honey, I'll think about it. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Although the whole family was worried about Emily, a real friend and like-minded John found in the person of Camille. Emily's grandmother calmed the future father down. Everything will be fine. All women give birth. That's our lot in life. And Emily will cope with this task. The man wanted to believe the words of a wise woman, but anxiety for his wife and child kept him on his toes. Thank you, Camille, for your support. Your words to God's ears. Don't worry, sweetheart. Heaven hears everything and angels are already circling ready to protect your baby. Emily's father stayed on the phone. Finally, he joyfully shouted, all gave birth to a girl, we have a granddaughter. In spite of the late hour, the relatives hurried to the hospital. Even Camille decided to keep up with the company. Emily's mother wanted to cool the old lady's ardor. Mom, where are you going to go skiing and stay home? No, not that. I've waited so long for this day to stay home. When the delegation of relatives appeared in the emergency room, the nurse on duty looked at the unusual team with surprise. Wait, I'll call the ward now. Not 2 minutes passed as the girl reappeared. Who is the father of the newborn? John took a step forward. Aya. Wait, the doctor will be here in a bit. He wants to talk to you. The girl tried not to look into the eyes of the happily smiling John. The doctor who had invited him into the office also had a strange expression on his face, but the first words of the doctor shocked the man. It's very hard for me to say this, but the girl was not born quite healthy. She has a severe heart defect, and she needs special care now. We have everything ready at home. The conditions are perfect. You misunderstand me. The baby can't breathe on her own, so we're gonna put her in a ditch, It's a special chamber where she'll be given oxygen. When she's a little stronger in about 2 weeks, the perinatal center, and she'll be operated on. John wasn't quite sure what the doctor was talking about. What surgery? What are you talking about? She's just a little baby. I'll be honest with you, the baby won't survive without surgery. Your wife doesn't know anything yet. It was a difficult labor, and we haven't told her anything yet. So it's up to you to decide. If it's a matter of saving a life, of course I agree. But how could this happen? Why? That's a question no one can answer. The most important thing now is to determine a treatment strategy. Don't despair. Although the threshold is difficult, not everything is lost, but you will have to do several operations. So have courage and patience. Basically, now the future of the baby depends on you and your wife. John left the doctor's office and sank down on the couch without strength. Emily's parents and grandmother looked fearfully at the grief-stricken father. John, my dove, tell me, what's wrong? Camille clutched at the man's arm. Emily's parents also stood with aggrieved faces. What's wrong with Emily? John, don't say anything. No, with the baby. The girl was born with a malformation. With his head down, the man wandered toward the exit. Camille tried to catch up with him. You can't write it like that. They cure such diseases today, and my granddaughter will be cured. John stopped and looked at the old woman with his manly smile. I envy your optimism, Camille, but I don't believe in angels and heavenly powers anymore. You shouldn't have faith. Faith gives you strength. First, John tried to follow the advice of my wife's grandmother. He helped his wife in everything, on whose shoulders all the hardest things fell. After the first operation that little Wendy had when she was only a month and a half old, the girl recovered quickly. As it should be, a healthy baby, in a year she already independently ran and happily made a mess in the apartment. But it is known that trouble comes from there, where no one expects it to come from. Young parents rejoiced at every success of their daughter and tried to diversify her leisure time. They did not refuse the invitation of a colleague at work whose daughter was a few months older than Wendy. John, come as a family. Our girl is 2 years old. We want to celebrate in a fun way. The party was a success. Happy Emily and John watched their daughter play enthusiastically with other children. The consequences of the event manifested themselves after 2 days. The girl began to suffocate, and the mark on the thermometer all the time showed 39. For 2 weeks, the child was saved in intensive care, but a trivial cold left the most severe consequences. Wendy never fully recovered, and every half hour she had to be given oxygen. For the young family, the days were dark. Most of the budget was spent on necessary medications and trips to the best clinics, although relatives helped as much as they could, but the funds were clearly insufficient. And then there is a distinguished professor to whom they almost got to a consultation, said, "The situation is grave. The little girl's heart is like an old woman's. It cannot withstand even minimal loads." Emily pleaded, "What should we do? Help save the girl." The professor philosophically remarked, "Sometimes medicine is powerless. You have a special case, but tears and pleading will not help you here. The only correct solution, in my opinion, will be a repeated operation to install an artificial valve. But it's still a temporary measure. In the long run, we need the help of transplant surgeons." John's alert. "Professor, you mean to say that yes, you have understood me correctly. Your daughter will need a donor heart. But I want to warn you right away that the waiting list is years long. They say shared grief brings people together. But Emily and John worked out against that law. 6 months after the consultation of the famous professor, Wendy had a second operation, but it had almost no positive result. The girl was practically unable to exist without the machine through which she breathed. Therefore, Emily could not take her out even for a walk. For the mother and the sick girl, the world was now confined to the size of a 2-room apartment with a balcony. And down there, a very different life was simmering. But despite her serious illness, Wendy was unrecognizable. She was homeschooled and eagerly awaited the arrival of her teachers. Another of the girl's hobbies was drawing. In her incomplete 8 years, she accurately conveyed all the shades and details of the plot of her work. She was happy to show it to anyone who wanted to see it. One day the teacher, who came to visit them every day, said, "Your girl has a talent. If you don't mind, I will show her drawings to an artist I know who teaches at the Academy of Art." At first, Emily did not pay any attention to the words of the young teacher, but she gave her daughter several works, and soon forgot about it, the load of worldly cares, every day more and more heavily pressed on the woman. One day she confessed to her mother, who visited them daily. The girl nodded at the mask. "Don't think that if a person has a bad heart, his head doesn't work. I understand everything perfectly well." "And what do you understand about what?" "Mom and Dad don't seem to be fighting, but they're no longer happy like they used to be. And I wish they were cheerful again, and we'd all go to the park together for a walk. Do you remember that?" "I do. That's why I paint my pictures, to make a lot of money. I'm going to sell them." Evelyn was struck by the pragmatism of a sick girl. "Who put you up to this?" "Grandma, you're crazy. I saw on TV how a boy with no arms could hold a brush with his lips and paint. I have arms and legs, but they'll sew my heart back on later." So the professor said, "Oh, you're distracting me. I wanted to show you the picture I'm going to give to Mom and Dad." The girl rummaged through the folder with drawings, and after a second pulled out a colorful drawing. Wendy and her parents could be easily recognized in the 3 smiling people. The girl corrected the mask and asked with undisguised pleasure, "Really? Great. Just great. Are you such a good girl?" Tears came to her eyes. And not to upset her granddaughter, Evelyn left the balcony. "I'm gonna go help your mom, and you draw." The drawing with a positive subject remained on the balcony. Apparently, the young artist forgot to hide it in her folder. In the evening, John, as usual, showed up when his wife and daughter were already asleep. He decided to go out on the balcony to get some fresh air, and so noticed his daughter's drawing. "What is it?" "It's Wendy. She wanted to give us a present for our wedding anniversary, but while talking to her grandmother, she forgot to put her drawing away." John didn't notice his wife coming over, despite her heart condition. "Our Wendy is drawing and generally trying to live the life of a normal child, and she is succeeding. It's a shame you don't see it." Emily disappeared into the bedroom. John, for a long time in the moonlight, looked at the drawing, in which everything was filled with special meaning. Emily did not wait for any words from her husband. She thought that something would awaken in him that would make him return to the John she knew. But he went to bed silently, also silently left for work in the morning. Emily knew from his phone conversations that her husband was up for a promotion and justified his constant delays with that. The fact that he was promoted Emily, of course, pleased. After all, it is an addition to the salary, and maybe they will be able to buy Wendy something more expensive, which will help her better than domestic drugs. But the next day, something happened that made Emily forget her worries. Toward lunchtime, the doorbell rang. Yes, so insistently that even Wendy lifted her head from her drawing. Emily wiped her hands and went to open it. Strange. Who could it be? On the doorstep stood the same teacher who had admired Wendy's drawings and had even taken some to show someone. With her was a man in his 60s, 65. "Hello, Emily. Forgive me for dropping by unannounced. I'd like you to meet him. This is the artist, the teacher from the Academy of Art, Robert." Emily thought she'd heard that name before on TV when the man was being honored with an award. "Hello. Come in, please." The man immediately sat down next to Wendy. They talked about something and his eyebrows went up every now and then. Then he asked Wendy, "Do you have any of your favorite drawings?" The girl smiled. "Of course, I even have them in a separate folder." The girl looked at Emily, and she quickly pulled out the folder with the drawings. "Maybe some tea." Robert smiled. "You know, I wouldn't say no to that." Half an hour later, they sat down at the set table. Wendy sat on the kitchen sofa eagerly, catching every word the artist said. "You see, Emily, will you allow me to call you that?" Yes, of course, your girl has talent, but I think you realize that yourself. I feel like a snail in a shell. I imagine my sweet grandmother would be telling me off right now for saying that. I wish she were here. I miss her a lot too. Mom was a great optimist. I only saw her cry once. It was when my father died. So always with a smile and a push. We don't so much want to be like Grandma, but we can't. Especially lately. I'm always moping around, just hanging in there for Wendy. Oh, John, I mean, he used to support you through everything. Or has that changed? Emily didn't want to dump her problems on her mother's head, but she felt a desperate need to share them with someone. I don't know, maybe it's just a figment of my sick imagination. But John has changed a lot, especially in the last year. He's become irritable, even rude to me. He won't even go into Wendy's room. You should talk to him. I've tried, but he's avoiding direct conversation. I get the impression he's afraid. Afraid of me and Wendy and everything in this house. You know what, Mom? My husband's been coming home closer to midnight, so I'm starting to think he's got another woman. If he leaves me and my daughter, I don't know how we're gonna live. Don't you dare even think about that. Thank God you're not alone. Your father and I are always there for you. And John is a very responsible man. I'm sure he wouldn't do something as mean as this. Oh, Mom, I'm not so sure about that. He's changed. Suddenly, Emily thought of the teacher who had praised Wendy's talent. I've bored you to tears, but there's good news. Vanessa, the teacher took some drawings to show the artist. Of course, I don't believe in all the Cinderella stories, but who knows? Evelyn said thoughtfully, I told you 100 times my granddaughter gems. It takes such a sick child to draw like that. Would you hire a tutor or art teacher for her? Mom, I'd love to, but with what money? We're barely making ends meet as it is. Medicines are so expensive, and we have the only breadwinner, and he's always in a bad mood. And you don't need anything. I don't think lessons like this will cost much. My father and I will help. Maybe our Wendy will become a famous artist. Where is she, by the way? Emily nodded in the direction of the balcony, where she was organizing a plain air painting in the nature. Although you can hardly call nature a small oasis of green under our balcony. The girl was passionately drawing with her tongue sticking out. The mask of the device did not interfere with the creative process, and the young artist deftly corrected it every time she changed her body position. Evelyn leaned over to examine her granddaughter's work. Well done, my good girl. Grandma, I didn't realize you were here. The mask slipped traitorously from her face, and the girl began to gulp for air with her mouth. Evelyn quickly fixed the device. You mustn't make any sudden movements, and you mustn't even get excited. Grandmother, you don't have to be afraid for me. I'm used to it. A lady came to visit us and said that she would soon give me a device so that I could go out with it. Emily confirmed it from afar. It slipped my mind. Wendy was sponsored by a foundation called Sunshine. They've actually promised to help with the purchase of a new machine. But it's gonna take a while to raise enough money. But thank you for visiting, bringing gifts. Wendy was unhappily interrupted by her mother. Mom, you've been talking to Grandma for almost an hour. Now it's my turn. Emily conceded to her daughter. All right, folks. I'll shut up and won't bother you. I'd better go to the kitchen and make something tastier. Taking advantage of his mother's absence, Wendy called his grandmother. And I have something to show you. Mom and Dad's anniversary is coming up. Evelyn asked in surprise. How do you know, Grandma? Do you think I'm so little? I even walk around the apartment alone sometimes without that nasty thing. Talent is a rare thing these days. That's why you have to work hard to find it. I have a son. He is a businessman, and he helps children and me at the same time. From time to time, he organizes children's exhibitions. I think you've heard of them. Well, I think that your daughter's work is worthy of such an exhibition, worthy of recognition. Emily listened and could not believe her ears. She thought her daughter was just good at drawing. It's not that much of a talent. And it turns out, I don't even know. You can see that. Wendy, She's not exactly healthy. That's no reason for her to be recognized. Besides, it's to your advantage. The more people know about Wendy, the more likely someone will be able to help her. And I'd like to provide Wendy with a personal art teacher. You will determine the times when you are comfortable having a stranger in the house. The young artist's first solo exhibition was at the Children's Art House on Family Day. It's a joyous occasion. Wendy met on the rise because a few days before she was given a new machine. Therefore, the master of drawing could attend the presentation herself. Emily tried not to let her daughter notice how bad she felt. As soon as it was known that the exhibition was definitely going to happen, they were announced the date and time. Emily tried to tell her husband about it. True, it did not work on the first day. He came already at 0 o'clock. So Emily got up early to prepare breakfast for John early, and at breakfast to tell him everything. He entered the kitchen, looked at the pancakes and scrambled eggs. Then he looked at Emily and sighed faintly and sat down at the table. "John, do you want coffee or tea?" "Coffee." She placed the mug in front of him. "John, I need to talk to you." "Emily, I've got a lot on my mind right now. And I want to eat breakfast so I can concentrate." She could see that her husband was having trouble holding back, but she wasn't about to back down. "It's nice when you're never here. I need to talk. I need to work things out. After all, you can." Emily stepped back to the window and turned away from him. John looked at her carefully for the first time in a long time. The jeans she'd had on since before she was pregnant, they were so weathered that they seemed purposely frayed. Some kind of uniform t-shirt. Emily appeared very thin in it, though she did seem to have lost a lot of weight. Hair in bunches. He'd always hated the bun. But she used to laugh and say, "Do you think I should sweep up dust with my hair?" Yes, Emily has changed a lot. If that's the case, you can see it on a young woman. What to say about him and his pants? It's a year old too. Of course, he has others, but it's still a long time since he buys what he wants. Yes, he doesn't buy anything at all, doesn't make anything of what he wants. All he does is work and bring in money. Sometimes he has the feeling that he comes home after a paycheck, throws all the money into a big cauldron that burns with hellfire, and immediately realizes it is possible to turn around and go back to work, because there is no more money. Lately, John has been realizing that he's tired of it all. He doesn't want to live like this anymore. Yes, Emily loves him, and Wendy is not to blame. But he's human too. He hasn't done anything wrong in front of God. He shouldn't have to carry all this. He's not even 40 yet, and he feels like he's well into his 60s, so the life he hasn't lived is over. There's nothing ahead of him. I mean, it's the same as it is now. Emily turns around, and John sees the determination in her eyes. "Emily, don't start. We'll talk. We'll talk about everything. Give me a few days to get my thoughts together." She suddenly agreed. "All right. Aha. Let's do it Friday. We can't drag this out any longer. We have a show on Sunday." She wanted to say exhibition, but John had already left. Emily grinned sadly. For more than a year now, he didn't kiss her when he came, didn't kiss her when he left. At first she cried resentful, but then she accepted nothing. She and her mom bought a beautiful Wendy dress for Friday. After all, it's the first important event in her life. John didn't come home on Friday. He didn't show up until Saturday. But it was already night, and waking him up in the morning to go to the exhibition didn't work. Emily could clearly smell the booze. It was so strange. John didn't like to drink at all. Anyway, they were already running late, so they left him to it. They left for the trade show. Evelyn, really mumbling. What kind of father is that? Such an event not to go to the child. "Mom, I can't even tell him about this event because John is never home." Evelyn choked with indignation. "But that's okay. She will talk to John again. Emily has fallen out of love. It happens. But the baby had nothing to do with it. The show was a real success. So many words were said for Wendy that the girl got excited, and even had to take medication. But the grandmother and mother saw it coming, so it was without consequences. And then, at the very end of the party, Robert brought a man to them. "Lovely ladies, please love and applaud. This is my son, Kevin. He's the man who organized this party." Emily smiled involuntarily. Robert spoke of his son with ill-concealed pride. "Good evening. I am very glad that my father was not mistaken again. Creative people light up very quickly. But tonight I'm shocked, even though my dad says I can't feel like artists." Emily had time to look at the man while they were having a quite secular dialogue, about 40 years old, maybe a little more. Very personable, austere, but not until he started smiling. His smile was mischievous, boyish, and at that moment it was clear that no, he was 40 and could not be. "I actually approached you for two reasons, or rather, two things. The first, Emily, several people would like to buy your daughter's drawings since she is a minor. Our man will help you decide on the price. He handles auction sales. And secondly, I would like to invite you all to a restaurant to celebrate such a success, but apparently it will not be possible." He looked pityingly at Wendy, who was terribly tired, pale, and thoughtful. "Yes, unfortunately. No way. Wendy should have rested a long time ago." But then Evelyn intervened. "Emily, I think that such an event should be celebrated on this day. You could invite Kevin and Jenna to visit." She turned to the men. "You just can't imagine how she cooks. I always told her she should go to work in a restaurant instead of a boring accounting department." Emily smiled modestly. She was uncomfortable with her mom's words. But now some words from her were required. "Okay, let's do Tuesday. It's a free day, Wendy, no classes." Robert smiled contentedly. "Oh, I'm so pleased. If only who knew. I hate these restaurants. I've had them all my life, and I'm always mixing up forks." That's his confession. Emily was immediately relieved. A second before his words, she was feverishly thinking about how to set and prepare everything so as not to fall into the mud. It turned out that great people could be ordinary, too. They agreed on a time. Kevin offered them a ride. Evelyn immediately said she had somewhere else to be, so Emily and Wendy had to go alone. They talked mostly about the exhibition at home. Kevin smiled. "So I'll see you the day after tomorrow. Does that sound right?" "Good. By then, I think we'll have a buyer in mind." They said a warm farewell, and Wendy could barely move her legs. "I didn't call it." Emily immediately put her to bed. She heard John splashing in the bathtub. "Very good. Now they're going to talk." Well, he's not callous enough not to be happy about his daughter's success. About 20 minutes later, the bathroom door opened. John appeared in the kitchen outside the house. He didn't even ask where they were. It was like a kid with oxygen masks on his face, walking around free and clear all the time. "Yeah, we're home. It's really good that you're home too. Otherwise, lately we only know about my husband having Wendy's daddy from memory." He turned to her abruptly. "And I don't understand what's wrong. I pass you like an ox, and I can't even afford anything. All the money goes into the abyss. You must have forgotten that there is another life, the life that normal people live. They go to the movies, buy themselves expensive things. Their homes don't smell like medicine. They work to live a life of pleasure. My life is weird. I'm 30-something. I'm young. I want to live." Emily stood silent and looked at her husband in horror. It can't be. It wasn't him, because her John couldn't say that. I mean, she knew him well. He was always worried about them. He loves them. "John, I don't know what you're talking about. Wendy, our daughter, was born this way." He turned sharply toward her. "No, not us, you. You're the one who gave birth to a sick child. You're torturing yourself. You're torturing the baby. And you've decided that I don't want my life either. But I'm wrong. You're the only one in this whole situation. Wendy's sick, and I'm Pasha, seeing no light, seeing no money, day and night. And you're just being there for her. You work, you spend mine, but sometimes you give your daughter medicine. John, What are you talking about? Emily took a few steps and literally fell into a chair. That I'm telling the truth. And I don't understand why I have to suffer. Basically, it's not life. It's just existence. I'm sick of it. Do you understand? Do you or don't you? Emily said in a surprisingly calm voice. And what do you propose to change? What do you need to do to find a way out of this situation? You do realize that we can't change anything yet. That's right. But I can. Why should everyone suffer? If just one person can live a normal life. I even shook my head to try to understand what my husband was saying. John, I don't understand you. He's sitting next to me at the table. Emily, I'm leaving. I don't care what you think of me, but I don't want to live like this anymore. Emily felt the ground shake under her feet. You're leaving. But it's death to Wendy. You know the medication they're giving her barely works. We have to buy everything. What are we gonna do without you? Emily, don't try to make me feel sorry for you. I'm not. I'm trying to understand if you're knowingly going through with this, knowing exactly what leaving you means to your daughter. John stood up silently and walked out into the hallway. Emily followed him. Tears came in torrents. John, please think about it. Think what will happen to us. But he threw on his jacket, turned to her. When you calm down, pack my things and don't try to bother me. It won't make a difference anyway. He closed the door behind him, and Emily slid quietly down the wall. What to do now? How to live? About 10 minutes later, she heard her daughter calling her. Emily rushed to her. Wendy was pale, but it was nothing Emily did not notice. Mommy, can I draw? Emily smiled. You draw all the time. Don't you get tired? No, Mommy, why do I like you so much? I even feel better about myself. Emily restrained herself as much as she could so that her daughter would not guess anything. She didn't need that kind of excitement. That evening, when Wendy was already asleep, Emily sat down in the kitchen to assess what they had of their medications and what they would have to buy soon. Then I counted the money, but they'll last a couple months if nothing goes up in price. What then? She clearly realized that if she didn't think of anything in those 2 months, everything would come to an end. It wasn't until the next day that she remembered they had company. Having to tear a little more from the budget was all for Wendy. Emily did everything automatically. She smiled machine-like at her daughter. She cooked, talked to her, and her mind kept racing with the thought, what to do. The guests arrived on time. Her mom had called to say her father was sick, and not to risk Wendy, she wouldn't be coming. She didn't want to catch a cold. I'm sorry, daughter. I'll manage. And then I'll be on my own. All right, Mom. I'll manage. Robert and his son showed up 1 minute later. Emily smiled, invited him into the room. Robert immediately dropped out. What smells? No, you tell me. How can you trade those smells for restaurant smells? Kevin smiled. Dad had always been a stickler for home-cooked meals and family gatherings at home. Mom never could get him used to the social rounds. Why didn't you bring your mom along? Emily looked at Kevin. She died 10 years ago. Dad barely made it out. Loved her dearly. Mom was an opera singer and sang until she died. Romantic nature. She loved her very much. Glitter, glamour. He was quiet for a while. And Dad, I'm so sorry. Emily was so upset. Who'd pulled her tongue? It's okay. We feel better now. Jenna's voice came from the room. He was talking to Wendy. Emily made a gesture toward the room. Come in, please. When they entered, Robert was standing by Wendy's desk, looking at something and frowning at Lou Brow. He threw a quick glance at Emily. Then said, Kevin, come here. Now the two men were looking at the drawing, and both were silent. Emily smiled. What did you see there? You know. By the way, I wanted to look at it too. But Wendy stopped her. Mommy, it's not finished yet. Wendy quickly hid the drawing. Emily, of course, was very surprised, but did not argue. Later, she would ask her daughter, since when was she not allowed to look at it? Drawings that are not quite finished yet. While sitting at the table and listening to Robert loudly admiring each dish, Emily seemed to relax a little. Kevin pushed his plate away. "Well, can we talk business now? Emily, here's a card that will receive funds from the sale of drawings of Wendy's paintings. There's already a few on there. I'd like your permission to take some to Italy. There's the annual Young Talent Show in a week. The prize is very impressive, but participation requires your written consent and a small photo shoot of Wendy." Emily shrugged. "Sure, why not?" Robert asked Emily, "Tell me, how do you live? Do you have a foundation or do you have your own foundation?" "I recently took the Sunny Foundation under my wing. They bought us a portable machine. We couldn't afford it on our own." Pardon me for the indiscreet question about medicine. We all realize that we don't have much money. My husband made a good living, but his salary was barely enough. I'm sorry, why was he earning? He lost his job. Emily smiled sadly. Only now she realized that she was all alone with her problems. "No, he left us just yesterday." She said she couldn't work for me and a sick child for the rest of her life. Kevin choked on his tea. Robert clenched his fists. "Don't you worry, Emily. Everything in life is for the best." She smiled weakly. John walked to the park and sat down on a bench. Not half an hour later, a woman came and sat next to him. "So, did you talk?" "It was fine. What do you think?" Jenna placed her hand affectionately on his shoulder. "John, relax. All the bad stuff is behind you. There's nothing but positivity ahead. In a month you and I are going to the sea. It'll be a great reward for your suffering. You'll come back with renewed vigor. Let's get to work. The promotion is yours for sure. You realize you've been living without oxygen." "I do." "Jenna, let's make a bigger deal. Just don't bring them up." "Sure. What do you say? So, shall we go home? I ordered dinner from the restaurant. I also bought a nice wine. I'm taking the day off tomorrow. So we have all night." John smiled. He would try to put out of his mind everything that prevented him from having a good life. It was the kind of life he had dreamed of, or rather started to dream of when he started to get closer to Jenna. It had all happened suddenly. He hadn't even thought about it. Cheating on Emily, especially not with Jenna, whom he had disliked since the very first day he met her. To be honest, he hadn't seen her in a long time. Probably since Emily was pregnant. I hadn't seen her, and I'd never been interested. What difference does it make how his wife's ex-girlfriend lives? That day, his car failed to start once again. And of course, not at home, but at work. The time is such that public transportation does not run, and a cab is very expensive, almost to the other side of the city. He decided to walk a few stops closer to the center. There the minibuses were definitely very thirsty. John saw a store ahead of him and turned there to buy some water. At the door he was almost knocked down by some lady. "I beg your pardon." And the lady suddenly said, "John, are you or is it?" He looked up in surprise. In front of him stood Jenna, groomed with makeup, perfumed with expensive perfume. Not Jenna recognized. "What are you doing here at this hour?" "Yeah, my car broke down. I'm walking to the center, and I'm driving. You can see my head standing there." He turned around and saw a pretty fresh BMW in bright blue. "It's a nice machine." Jenna laughed. "That's not what I mean. I mean I can give you a ride. Go ahead, buy what you need and get out. I'll wait for the car." John went to the counter. It was kind of a mixed feeling. On the one hand, I didn't want to see Jenna. On the other hand, she's so beautiful, so fashionable, so free. It was like a breath of fresh air. He sat down in the car, which smelled of new leather, expensive perfume, something else so forgottenly expensive. Jenna smiled. "Did you like it?" She laughed. "You make it sound like you're starving yourself. You had a pretty good job, as I recall. But the job hasn't gone anywhere. Everything else is gone. I mean, Wendy's sick. All the money, absolutely everything, goes to her treatment. Emily doesn't work, so we can't use my paycheck for anything extra. If you knew how sick I am of this, he said, and was afraid of his own words. He had never let himself do that before. Jenna looked at him thoughtfully. Listen, let's take the stress out of retirement. I just finished my reports at work. I'm the boss, but I'm tired as a dog. John wasn't much of a drinker, but I just didn't want to go home so badly. So he said, let's go back to my place. I have everything in my bar that the soul desires. The man, to be honest, did not expect such a turn. I thought they'd sit somewhere neutral, and now it's her house. He wasn't a little boy and understood perfectly well how such meetings ended. He was suddenly overcome with a fever. He pictured Jenna on the regional sheets with a glass of champagne in her hands. In a hoarse voice he replied, "Give it to you." That evening, or rather night, turned everything upside down in John's head. Jenna very unobtrusively made him realize that his self-sacrifice was just dope. Well, I mean, come on. What's your fault? You don't have any genetic abnormalities. There's no one in your family with this disease. Why do you have to suffer your whole life? Don't you think it's a little unfair? Are you earning money? You could have a very good life. I'm sorry, it's none of my business. Let's have a drink. They had another drink, and then Jenna put on some beautiful music and asked him to dance. It had been so long since he danced. It had been so long since he'd been in such a romantic setting. He left Jenna, and in the morning he told himself it wouldn't happen again. He went home quietly. Immediately caught, though barely noticeable, but the smell of medicine, all so gray, dull, went to the kitchen, opened the refrigerator. Everything is so ordinary. Even to take and just eat something tasty will not work, because such impractical food they just do not have. Everyone's on a very tight budget. Jenna called him a week later. He didn't know how she got his number, but he was glad. "John, hi. I don't know how you're gonna take my offer. Anyway, it's my birthday tomorrow. It's a non-circular date, so no celebration. I've been thinking and thinking about who I'd like to sit with. And you know, I've decided that you're the only person I want to see at my house." Was he pleased? He sure did. He'd long since forgotten that Jenna was unpleasant, that Jenna exuded anger and jealousy. What was Jenna like now, anyway? What's his Emily like? Heaven and earth. And even if John were to go to pieces, he would change absolutely nothing. I mean, not at all. Jenna, I'd love to, John, but if you're talking about presents, please don't even think about it. I understand. In fact, I think we need to find a way out of this situation. Well, there has to be. They always say there's only one way out of one situation. And you don't have one. Well, I'll see you tomorrow. What time would be best for you? If you can get an hour early so I can be there at 6 o'clock, I can do that. John clenched his eyes. What is he doing? Then asked Jenna decisively, "Jenna, can you at least tell me what kind of flowers you like?" She laughed. "I like roses, like all women do." John almost blurted out that, for example, his Emily adores only chrysanthemums. All then yes, tomorrow from that birthday. John's mind clicked. He didn't want to go home. He didn't want to live like that anymore. He wanted to live a good life, the way a professional of his caliber deserves. It took him a long time to come to this decision, even though Jenna had urged him to move almost immediately. Maybe he still would have hesitated. But then Emily started talking to him. How could she tell him to do all the posts? And when she caught him, he just didn't bother to move that unpleasant conversation again. What was the point of putting up with it? He told her everything that was on his mind. Everything was almost ruined by that drawing, the one he had once found on the balcony, and something stirred in his soul. It made him want to cry. I went to bed upset. In the morning, I decided I had to end things with Jenna. She'd sent him a list of hot tours in the morning. He hasn't been to the seaside in 1,000 years. It's so tempting. The vacation at work was no problem. John, of course you should go. Don't we get it? You haven't been on vacation in 5 years. Don't worry. We'll support your department. So you'll be back. You'll be fine. How's yours? His boss looked at him sympathetically. What could he tell him about leaving them? Well, of course he couldn't. He shrugged, nothing new. All right, go on. I won't keep you too long. Take a vacation from the hubris, realizing that after the vacation, you will be waiting for a completely different position. It's a good thing you're on vacation. With renewed vigor, he started. He recounted the conversation to Jenna, leaving out the phrase about his family. Jenna rubbed his hands together. But here's life getting better. First, we're gonna have to get you a decent car. Your car's been in the scrap heap for a long time. Then we can expand our place. John lay on the couch and believed that everything would be just like that. What else could it be? Now he's a free man. The vacation at the sea was unforgettable. John never even once had the urge to call to find out how Wendy or Emily were doing, and Jenna never left a minute to spare. Take him on a field trip, to his room, to the beach. He's tanned, and he's looking good. Jenna would lie beside him at night and say, you're so handsome, strong, you're the best. And he believed it was true. He went to work with pleasure. First of all, he had a good rest. Secondly, he realized that very soon he would become not the head of the department, but the head of the whole division. And this is quite different. Even cars will be allocated to him. And not just any car, but a good one. His company has all the cars. Fire greeted the guard, immediately went to the office to the boss to hand souvenirs from the sea. Good morning, David. The boss slowly turned from the window. Hello, John. How was your vacation? Very well. I brought you a souvenir. The warden looked at John strangely. He didn't even feel comfortable under that look. I brought my daughter a souvenir too. John stopped smiling. What did he want? Sooner or later everyone was going to find out, and he was mentally preparing for it. What did his daughter have to do with it? What did she have to do with it? Oh, John, I've been working with people for so many years, and I never thought you'd be capable of something like this. John chuckled. But you can't judge anything because you don't know anything. I'm sorry. I have to go to work. The supervisor gave him an attentive look and shook his head. Clearly, there was a woman involved. He had talked to Emily several times, and he liked her. A beautiful, quiet woman, strong in spirit. And John was just furious. Who gave them the right to meddle in his private life? Who? What did they even know about his life? He slumped into his chair. Only a glass partition separated him, as head of the department, from the rest of the employees. Several times he took a break from his papers and realized that his colleagues were looking at him and obviously talking about him. So everyone here knew about him. But the most unpleasant thing that day was not the slanted glances, not the conversation with the boss. When he came to the cafe on the first floor to have lunch, people parted to let him to the cash register. He grinned. Wow, respect. They know he's going to be the boss soon. He put everything he had chosen on the tray, paid, and headed for his favorite table by the window. There were only 2 women from the neighboring department sitting on one side of the table. Enjoy your meal. He set down his tray and sat down. The women silently took their trays and moved to another table. John poured himself a fury. The first thing he would do when he became the boss would be to fire these 2 chickens who stuck their noses where they didn't belong. And a week later, something happened that John certainly didn't expect. A general meeting was called throughout the office. John came that day in a suit with a white shirt. He was well aware that today was the day he would be assigned to his new position. Jenna looked him over meticulously at home and was pleased. You look great. I like it a lot. After lunch, all the people stretched out to the hall. John went too. He sat in the front row where the other department heads sat. For the last time now, he would always sit at the table on the stage. His supervisor, David, lowered himself down next to him. He listened silently to everything that was being broadcast from the stage. Then John heard something. He jumped up, but quickly sat down by his supervisor. Some broad was appointed. After a second, he headed for the exit in rapid strides. An hour later, when everyone was back, including David, John headed for his office. Can you explain to me what that was about? You said I was going to be the boss. The chief looked at him and answered calmly. We all consulted and decided that such a serious post could not be headed by a man without principles. The man is a traitor. Jesus, what the hell are you talking about? 1,000 people get divorced. 1,000 people leave their families. Maybe. But in this situation, what do you know about the situation? Have you lived in that kind of hell? You haven't. It's not for you to judge. The warden took off his glasses, rubbed his nose. How do you know from others? I have a son with cerebral palsy, and his mom wanted an easy life just like you. No problems. But it's okay, we're doing fine. And by your logic, I should have put him in a boarding school immediately. In that case, I should probably quit. He's already regretting what he said. What if David says yes, and then what does he do? You know, that's not a bad idea. Anyway, you won't get any more support from me. In the evening, Janet was long gone from work. John didn't know why he was so worried, did he? Well, he quit. That's fine. There's always a job for a professional like him. He'll find one tomorrow. Jenna showed up at 0:00 with a whiff of champagne. What are you doing up? Where have you been? Jenna gave him a surprised look. What's with the tone? Normal tone. I was wondering where my woman was. Actually, it's gonna be morning soon. But first of all, I'm not two, I'm a woman. Serfdom was abolished a long time ago. And secondly, what kind of snobbery is this? I'm not going to answer to you for every move I make. We're adults, we have friends, we have girlfriends. John realized it was time to slow down. But you could have called. I could have, but I forgot. John, gritting his teeth, she forgot. He called 100 times. First she hung up on him. Then she just turned the phone off. I have news. Jenna raised her hands. John, all tomorrow. I'm insanely tired. He silently followed her into the bedroom, but Jenna collapsed so there was no room for him on the bed. He had to go back to the living room and make himself comfortable on the short couch. He lay awake for a long time, staring at the ceiling, thinking. He was hired. True, the salary was not so decent. Jenna was terribly unhappy. Emily should have her parental rights revoked so she doesn't run around complaining. What makes you think it's her? Who else? Even if it wasn't her, it was her. I told you, they're just poisoning your life. By the way, you filed the divorce papers. And this guy, cute little wedding dress review. About 3 years later, Jenna was fired for a big shortfall. The whole debt was pinned on her. And John suddenly realized he was right back where he'd left off. Only there was a kid, and here was Jenna. Just like that, all the money was going into the abyss. Jenna was paying off the debt so she wouldn't go to jail, and John was working. Jenna couldn't because less than the principal. She wasn't okay with it. Principal positions are snapped up very quickly. One evening on the way home, John turned down a familiar street, stopped under the windows, stood looking at the glowing squares. It was so disgusting and sweet. Wanted to go up and say what a fool he was to be forgiven. I wanted to see his daughter's drawings. John, are you there? He jerked. Next to the car was the grandmother of their first-floor neighbor. Hello. Yes, I am. Haven't seen you in a while. You're just standing there for nothing. They sold your apartment and went somewhere very far away. You have to take an airplane. It's a different country. How did they leave? Why? Jenna's not allowed. But they didn't tell me that. They went away to live, I think. Oh, to Italy. He didn't understand anything. It's not like Grandma was confused. She's always been known to be very clever. And if that's true, then it's a load of crap. The doctor said a flight. Any flight could be Wendy's last. There's too much chance the valve could fail. Emily couldn't have volunteered for this, unless she also decided to make her life easier. No, Emily was definitely not capable of that. He pulled out of the yard, thinking about calling Emily's mother, But then he decided he'd better not. Now he could live his life in peace. But life wasn't going well. Things got a little out of hand. Jenna got a job as a bookkeeper at some housing and utilities department, and she made pennies. The firm where John worked was bought out and recruited young workers. He was offered to stay on the dole or quit. Now he had to scrape by on odd jobs, so he made a few. The car was the only thing he had when he was on the upswing. He and Jenna managed to buy a car. Jenna sold hers as soon as she got into debt. Today he came back from another coven. There was a desire to drink beer and sleep. But Jenna had other plans for him. "Why are you turning yourself in? What's the big deal?" "I'm tired. Do you watch the news? There's an exhibition of some artist in our town starting today. She came from abroad. They say she's very talented. But that's not what I'm talking about. Today the women were saying that the city is flooded with foreigners. Do you have any idea how much cab drivers make these days?" John looked longingly at the 2 bottles of beer. "Maybe I'll do it tomorrow. It's kind of a holiday for you and me today." "A holiday? What kind of holiday?" "But I left you 10 years ago." "But I wouldn't call it a celebration. Personally, I've had nothing but bad luck since you left." He was starting to get annoyed by the setbacks. "So it's okay that you're the one who broke up my family. Who needs you? Should I have lured you in with a finger? You didn't have to. You dropped everything and came running. Not even a sick child stopped him. What a man." John jumped up, fists clenched. "Are you gonna hit me? Go ahead." He stood there without moving. "But you can't even do that. You can't do anything." John walked silently to the door. Any more, and he'd hit her. It was all her fault, just her. It's just that she got caught up in the time when he doubted. Another person would have backed it up. It was all her and only her. John stopped for a smoke not far from the mall. Nearby on the wall he saw a large poster. Wow, Nick was a young talent. The exhibition was at the House of Culture. I wonder what she's doing here. Well, not a city, of course, not the latest, but not Moscow either. Why did she come here? Other cab drivers. He found out that there are indeed a lot of foreigners in the city. They came to buy paintings that hadn't been sold for a long time because of this exhibition. The foreigners paid well. They left tips. I mean, it makes sense to go there. It's kind of closed to everyone. I'm eating now. I'll go too, even though I made a lot of money today. A mustachioed cab driver got into a wrecked Zhiguli and drove off. John pulled out of the parking lot. It's almost an hour to 7 o'clock. So he'll make it 10 times that time there's no work in the city. Who was on his way home from work and who was going for a walk? Back home near the House of Culture stood a lot of cars, all expensive, beautiful cabs stretched along the edge of the parking lot. One car attracted his attention, a big white Jeep. John did not even immediately realize what brand it was. Got out of the car, walked the machine around in a circle. Yeah, not bad. I wonder how much it cost. He stood for a while longer, then got into his car. How come he fell asleep? John never realized. I guess the fatigue had taken its toll. Plus, the sun was warming up. Caught the phone ringing. "John, why aren't you answering the phone?" "It's the 3rd time I've called. I didn't hear you." "I'm not yelling." "What are you doing? Where are you? Is there a voice behind you?" John put the phone away. "And you're going to hang up?" "No, you imagined it. I just didn't say anything for a long time." "Okay, well, then I thought you weren't working." "Yes, I am. I am. Anyway, when you go home, get some sour cream and herring." "John, I was wondering where he got the money for that." The coven had already been shoveled out, but he bit his tongue in time. He was, like, working, not sleeping. You understand me? He didn't answer. He looked out of the car window into the street. A woman was walking from the House of Culture. He didn't pay attention to her at first, but then he froze. It was Emily. There was no doubt about it. She was so beautiful, so fashionable, that he fell out of reality a little. It was as if she hadn't even been 10 years old, although she looked even better now than when he'd left her. "John, can you hear me?" "Hello. What's the connection?" "What for?" "Just paying money." The phone fell on the seat, and John jumped out of the car. Emily, the woman, who was already walking too slowly, as if she was waiting for someone, stopped, looked at him, and her eyes opened in surprise. "John, yes, Emily, it's me. What's not to recognize? You look beautiful." Emily's eyes turned cold. "Yeah, well, I didn't recognize you right away." "Oh, thank you." I know. That's how confused he was. I thought she'd blossom at his compliment. "What's up, Emily?" "I'm good. Thank you." Like Wendy. Now he's done something really stupid. I mean, why ask? It's obvious that Wendy's gone. No doctor's ever given her that much, so why would he even bring up his daughter? On the other hand, she's his daughter. There's nothing wrong with Wendy either. He was surprised, and apparently he made it too obvious. But did a young and girlish voice speak from somewhere off to the side? "You won't believe it, Daddy. Despite your best efforts, she didn't die." John turned sharply. A young girl stood beside him. Yes, he recognized her immediately. It was his daughter, Wendy. Behind her stood a man a little older than John himself, and he was looking at him with an unkind look. "Why did you do that, Wendy?" "I meant you no harm." The girl laughed. "No, you didn't. You didn't mean to hurt us or me when you left me without money, knowing how much the medicine cost. You knew I was dead without it. Mom hid everything, and I heard what you told her before you left. But you don't look like your life is any better without us, do you?" He didn't want to. "Do you know what we've all been through? When we were looking for a heart, we found one. But it was only a few hours on an airplane in another country. My heart stopped. Do you have any idea what Mom went through while you were on vacation from us? If it wasn't for Daddy Kevin, we wouldn't be talking to you right now. He's the only reason I'm alive, is because of him and Grandpa. I was able to fly back to my hometown for my own exhibition." John stood there in silence. Then he asked, "So Nick's young artist, is that you? Is that what you missed?" "Yes, Daddy. I wish you had money now. And the life you want. I mean, I wanted it." "No, you wouldn't. You're just not capable of doing things like Daddy, Kevin. You know, he almost went to jail because he forced the pilots of a private plane to land near the hospital grounds. Otherwise, I wouldn't have survived. Would you have?" "No, Daddy, you couldn't have done anything because you'd rather walk away from difficulties and problems than deal with them." The man put his hand on Wendy's shoulder. "That's enough. Calm down." The daughter and the man walked towards the big white car. Emily looked at it thoughtfully. "But I won't ask you how you live. I can see that. I guess this is goodbye, John." He was just about to say something when he heard Jenna screaming. "John, wait, don't go." Oh my God, she was just home. Maybe she wasn't calling from home. Jenna ran up, out of breath, shoved John's bag. "Oh, at least he'll drive me home. I'm so tired." Emily, who was already walking to the car, stopped abruptly. She turned slowly and stared at John's wife. Jenna, the woman, also turned to her for a while, looked perplexed, and then, apparently recognizing Emily, left her with an appraising look and froze. "So that's who encouraged my husband to live a good life." Emily smiled. "Jenna, how many golden ones have you wished for?" "I think you only needed John to bite me harder. I had no idea it was you. You look like you're on a roll." "Oh well, it won't last long. You know how people fall from heights. No mistake. You buried your daughter. What kind of a bitch are you, Jenna?" "No, my daughter is alive and well. And as you can see, quite successfully." Jenna took a quick glance at the poster and wrinkled her nose like a toothache. "You're still something. But you're wearing expensive clothes for your daughter's account. So what? So you've never had happiness, and you'll never have a simple family life." Bam! Happiness. Jenna looked at her triumphantly. Kevin got out of the car again. Emily for a long time. You know our son is going to be very unhappy about the long absence, maybe even throwing toys." Emily looked at Kevin with loving eyes. "Yeah, you're right. Let's go," turn to Jenna and John. "Well, goodbye." "Advice, yes, love." They walked to the car. John followed Emily. Kevin turned around. "Not good." Looked at him and shook his head negatively. The car turned out and out of the parking lot. They stared after her. Suddenly, Jenna's face twisted with anger. "Emily, it's okay. You're crying at me, John. You should sue your daughter for child support. She's got so much money, and you're struggling. I know people. We'll get you disability, and she'll pay like a sweetheart." He turned to Jenna. "If you don't want to be disabled now, you better shut up." "What's that? What are you gonna do? Loser? You've got yourself in a pickle." John hit a woman for the first time in his life. Not hard, just slapped her on the mouth and walked to the car. Jenna lit up the whole street with power. Help, 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 finding no support because there was simply no one around. She threw herself after him. John, stop. Don't you want to have a good life? But think how much money we can get from her without her noticing." Jenna jumped into the car at the last moment, and John sped off. His wife said something, but he didn't listen. There were no thoughts in his head. A big white car parked in front of a beautiful house. "Well, here we are." "Tired, Wendy?" The girl looked gratefully at Kevin. "No, Daddy, Kevin. It's okay. Let's go already." I can imagine Sebastian torturing Grandpa. They went in, but the house was quiet. That's odd. Actually, they thought Grandpa was exhausted, and his 4-year-old grandson had turned the house upside down. Kevin looked into the room. Dad then turned to them and pointed his finger into the room and held it to his lips. Emily and Wendy looked into the room and laughed quietly. The grandfather and grandson were sleeping right on the fluffy rug by the fireplace. Grandpa had a toy bow in his hands. Sebastian had one too. Apparently, they had been running around so much that as they played, they fell asleep. "Daddy, Daddy." "Well, the doctor told you not to strain your body." Robert, without opening his eyes, said. "Who asks him to strain his body? I can't play war games now." Sebastian also woke up, held behind their backs with his eyes, and rushed to Wendy. But Daddy and Mommy let themselves be kissed too. Soon the whole family was sitting around the big holiday table. Wendy was thoughtful. Emily stroked her arm. "Why are you so upset?" "No, Mom, I think I'm relieved. I wanted to get back at him so badly. Today I realized that he got revenge on himself. Life punished him." Emily held her daughter close to her. "Well, that's good. You should never take revenge. Life will sort everything out." Robert raised his glass. "I propose we drink to Wendy's success. It's a resounding success. And as an expert on the subject, I'd say there's more to come." "Thank you, Grandpa." Not 5 minutes later, Robert raised his glass again. "And now I'd like to toast your return. Relatives should live together, and of course, in their homeland. 5 more minutes and another glass. In an hour, Wendy, we'll put your grandfather in the bedroom." Kevin was surprised to hear Papa speak. What was that all about? "You've never let yourself do that before." Robert stopped. "Son, if you only knew how glad I am to have you back. You have no idea how lonely and alone I've been here." Kevin looked at him in surprise. "But you never said anything." "Should I have?" "No, I didn't want to interfere with your life." The old man went straight to sleep. Wendy said how much he had suffered and why hadn't we come back sooner. Kevin hugged her. "It's all right. We'll all live together now. You'll paint. Mommy's planting flowers like she wanted. Daddy will help her. He's a lover of such beauty too. I'll finally take over the firm that's located in this town." And Wendy flicked the gum. Sebastian will go to kindergarten. He'll fight and hurt the teachers there. And we'll be scolded and called to the superintendent's office all the time. And we'll set up a line, and we'll take turns. We'll see who gives up the fastest." Wendy laughed softly and said, "Come on. Mom must have lost us. They went into the living room and saw that Emily and Evelyn were not sitting on the couch. Emily looks at the album with some surprise. This is the album Sebastian used to draw in all the time. Mom, what happened to your face? Nick, look at it. The girl looked at the album. She stared at it for a long time, then laughed. Congratulations, there's one more artist in the family. They laughed and hugged. Sebastian, seeing such an outrage, everyone hugging, and he was not taken. He burst out loudly, and the whole family rushed to him to soothe his tears. Emily looked at her own and realized that for the sake of such a day, she would agree to go through everything she had already gone through again. It's all about the outcome, and in the end, they are all happy.
Subscribe and click the bell.
The midday heat melted the asphalt, causing a transparent moraine to rise over the paths in the park. Adriana watched this natural phenomenon frustratedly, not noticing the white buildup that left her ice cream dripping down the hem of her dress. Adriana, you're all caught up. What are you staring at so intently? It's like you've been zombified. Get back on the ground. Betty first snapped her fingers in front of her friend's face, and then slapped her shoulder quite sensitively. Adriana flinched and wrinkled her nose unhappily. What's the matter with you and your fists? Is there any other way to bring you back to reality? I wasn't going anywhere. I was just staring a little bit. See, the air is shaking over the path like it's a transparent mirage. I wish I'd brought my camera. I would have taken a great picture. Don't worry. Tomorrow it'll be just as hot, and you'll be able to shoot here forever. By the way, it doesn't have the same effect as the road. It's a bigger scale. Betty had little interest in optical illusions. She was more concerned with real things. For example, she was worried about her friend's dress. The girl pulled a handkerchief out of her white purse. Fancy at least a little for 3 dresses. If I hadn't known you for 100 years, I'd think you were missing screws in your head. Personally, I don't give a rat's ass what goes on around me. Well, I mean, all this natural phenomena and global warming and crap. Adriana strenuously wiped away the ice cream stains, but the traces of her confusion were already firmly disappearing through the thin fabric. What are you worried about? Betty grinned, noticing the failure to remove the stain. I think you're trying for nothing. Now you'll be walking around all day. And as for what I care about at this point, I can answer without hesitation. As the famous commercial says, thirst is nothing. When there's dough, that's not what it says. I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but the point remains. You will not argue with me that for centuries everything was decided by money. And those who had a lot of it lived in chocolate. And those who couldn't save up, they lived a miserable existence for the rest of their lives. Centuries have passed, but nothing has changed. That's why for me now it's of paramount importance to provide my beloved with such a life as in the first case. Adriana playfully swiped her friend's nose with her own handkerchief. And you're telling me I'm fantasizing. Personally, I can't even imagine an honest way to accomplish your project. Your parents are just regular working people. I'm sorry, but you're not exactly a hard worker either. Betty even took offense at such a low opinion of her abilities. You're just like all the other teachers. Old stereotypes. How can they trust you with kids? You're the one who needs to learn about life, not from you. I can learn from me. And they're against it. You're right about some things, though, but you're a little too starry-eyed. I got into UCLA on the first try. Adriana has dealt a devastating blow to her friend's ego. And after graduation, you're going to work in a village club. I'll say, lucky ticket. Betty raised her slender finger in triumph. Your girlfriend has outdated information, and I won't go to the force. I'll conquer my Olympus here in the capital. Betty on her face began to resemble the same body part of a fairy tale kolobok. Wanting to stretch the pleasure, the girl kept silent, nodding her finger on the bench to the melody from the dog waltz. But Adriana did not appreciate the level of her friend's acting skills. Betty, save your tricks for the grateful audience. I'm out of here, and I don't know why you called me here. Betty, ignore Adriana's displeasure. Soon stuffed fun faces, and continued to nod the same uncomplicated tune, but in an accelerated rhythm. Okay, no offense, consider it a draw today, and there are no secrets about me. And I've decided to take a liberal arts degree, and now I'm a free bird. Oh my gosh. What about the mandatory work experience? Instead of answering the question directly, Betty suggested maybe one more scoop of ice cream to cool it down a bit. And I think I'll pass. You should. You'll get a sore throat. Now for the main point. Times have changed, and now you can do almost anything, if you have the desire and a little money. Anyway, my mother has some old connections, and she's arranged everything in the village. I'm not going. I'm going to raise the culture here. Betty was surprised again. I don't quite understand you. I'll tell you everything on my fingers. Briefly, it goes like this. Me and a couple of other people I know decided to form a team. Field of activity, weddings, and anniversaries. That is fully organization of events with voice, vision, and photos. We have almost a complete set. What's missing is a photographer. That's when I remembered your hobby. Now you're getting it. Adriana had not expected such a proposal. Her gaze expressed amazement. Her mouth opened involuntarily. Betty was pleased with the effect. Why don't you say something? Wait, Betty, I can't say that right away. You've just thrown me off my game. What about work? I have my own class now. What am I going to tell my parents? Why don't you just sit here and think about it? I'm buying you ice cream. High heels. Betty disappeared behind the shrubs that mossy cap on the sides of the park paths. It wasn't more than 2 minutes before she reappeared. Here you go. It's hot. So where was I? Wedding anniversary. Betty, but I'm not really into that stuff. And frankly, I don't like the idea. I tried acting once before and I just let you down. It was a long time ago and it's not true. Adriana didn't accidentally recall that long ago story, which still makes her blush. Betty was a sophomore at the time and asked a friend to work as a snow maiden for New Year's Eve. Adriana, we're swamped. There are plenty of Santa Clauses, but not enough snow maidens. It's nothing complicated. They come to the address, say their words, give presents, and that's it. But you can earn money for your pocket money. Betty knew how to persuade. And Adriana was enrolled the same day as a temporary employee of the company, the name of which she immediately forgot. She and Santa Claus gave the first 2 addresses to the same wives of students. Worked like clockwork, but the parents of children, for some reason, considered it their duty to treat the fairy tale guest. That's why after 2 visits, Adriana's companion's coordination of movements was impaired. And attention span. To put it simply, Grandpa knocked on the wrong apartment, which was in the application. Since the case was December 30, all decent people already at this time begin to slowly celebrate the main holiday of the year. The landlord, too, was already under a degree. Seeing Santa Claus on the doorstep of his own apartment, the man rejoiced sincerely. Come in, Grandpa. We've already been waiting for you. Snow Maiden regarded these words as a signal to action and immediately got down to business. While she read poems about New Year's fun of the host with Santa Claus missed another drink. Finally, it came to the handing out of presents. And Adriana, as it was written in the script, said loudly, "Where are our kids, girls, boys? Good Santa Claus, I brought you presents. Come and fly." Sort out all the presents, but no one answered Snow Maiden's call. Adriana repeated the piece one more time, but the landlord kept saying, "I'm for both today. I demand a gift." The man reached for the bag, which was stuffed to the brim with dolls, cars, and sweets. Santa Claus didn't even resist. He giggled and looked for an artificial beard. Then Adriana made one last desperate attempt. "Citizen, where are your children, Rick and Anna?" The man rolled his eyes upward in a weird way. "My kids are still up there in heaven. They haven't come down yet. And I don't. I have another last name, but I'm not telling you. I don't know how it would have ended if the drunken owner's wife hadn't shown up." It turned out that Rick and Anna lived downstairs. The unlucky couple was laughed at by their colleagues for a long time. Adriana was very worried about failure and warned her friend, "Betty, don't ask me for anything like that again. I've never felt such shame before. Adriana, don't make a big deal out of it. It's not a big deal. It's just a minor incident. But for 5 minutes of, as you say, embarrassment, you've made a nice profit. Indeed, the fee for the role of the Snow Maiden amounted to a lot of money, and Adriana used the money to buy a camera that was pretty cool for the time. Of course, Betty did not leave attempts to attract her friend to participate in such events, but always received a polite refusal. But the offer to work as a photographer seemed tempting to Adriana, and she agreed. Everyone loves holidays, but few people know how to turn an event into an unforgettable experience. Betty was a real ace at it. Creative solutions from her fountain flowed, and there was no shortage of customers. The popularity of the company Mood Plus grew by leaps and bounds, and after a few months had to screen clients. Although the company was legally registered on Sebastian, who was in charge of the technical part, Betty was in charge of clients and finances. She came up with the idea to change the work. Guys, why should we work for pennies when we can increase our income by 10 times and work only on weekends? To do that, we need to change our approach to clients a little bit. That is, to give preference to those who will pay more. These are the conditions of the modern market. Sebastian did not immediately agree to this option. I don't want to waste my time either. And Betty's offer would help us get to the next level. But there's one big but. We have an unspoken agreement with our competitors not to poach clients. Betty's looking down her nose. How could there be? But when it comes to Sebastian's collective benefit, it's not gentlemen who enter the ring, but wrestlers. And so it is in business. And again, I agree with you, Betty, but I have to object again, because in the ring there is a fair fight, but in business more often prohibited techniques are used. And I've, understandably, made myself clear. Quite, but there's a method to every scrap. I'm sorry, but to enter the field of talentless with their flat humor and terrible singing real professional is not proper. Nowadays, everyone who can't be bothered wants to make an easy buck. And by the way, not all customers like such cheapness. And the question of our safety can be discussed. I think we can afford to hire a couple of security guards. Sebastian and Betty tried to keep the other employees of the company out of the fun business. And there were only 3 permanent employees. Everyone else, including Adriana, were temporary employees. She was usually warned when she needed a photographer's services, and then she showed up at events with a full set of equipment bought at the company's expense. David, the girl's father, was truly jealous of her. You're lucky. Adriana, I too, when I was young, got interested in photography, and even before the wedding housewarming party myself went. But I had a zenith at my disposal. At that time, it was a luxury. Of my childhood memories, the fondest were when my father let little Adriana watch him develop pictures. Thanks to him, she learned to choose the right exposure and capture interesting moments of people and animals. The girl received her first recognition at the age of 13 for a series of photos about the nature of her native land. At that time, her works were even shown on TV, and for winning the contest, she was given a new project with cassettes. For a whole week at school and in the yard only talked about the girl's talent and her resounding. The first successes. But Adriana was not one to turn up her nose. She believed that each new victory obliged her to hone her skills. After consulting with her father, the girl enrolled in a photography studio. It was there that she was taught how to work properly with the camera. There she recognized all the subtleties of the art of photography. But Adriana liked shooting the sky with clouds or autumn trees more than wedding adventures. When she told her father about it, David thought for a long time before giving his assessment. You see, my daughter, the world has changed a lot. The values of romanticism are no longer in vogue because it doesn't pay enough, and any living person has many needs. Alas, you have to eat every day and wear something. So you have to choose between what's right and what's profitable. But you didn't choose your dad's. Why did I choose the first one? And you see how we live by the standard. Nothing extra. That's why my daughter took my advice. Try to find that golden mean, because on one altruism today will not last long. The meaning of this truth Adriana realized fully only a year after that momentous meeting with Betty. Within a few months of working at Mood. Plus, she was so involved in the new business that she could not imagine how her life would have turned out if she had not accepted her friend's offer. And that's what made the girl make the choice. Although she liked working at the school, and she really loved children, but she wanted something more. At weddings, she caught with a camera the most touching moments of the first day of married life of complete strangers, and in her spare time and filmed what brought creative satisfaction. When she told her father she decided to leave school, David wisely said, "You're an adult, and it's your decision to make. The only thing I can advise you is to think carefully. Sometimes a person commits a rash act and then regrets it for the rest of his life. I don't want you to regret anything. But in any case, Adriana, you can always count on my support." But there was one other person who was always there for her. That's Sebastian. The head of the company was 10 years older than the girl, so she always listened to his advice. True, from the gaze of the ubiquitous Betty, and alluded that the head of the firm did not just sympathize with Adriana. A friend. "Don't you notice the way Sebastian looks at you? I feel sorry for him." Although Adriana could see that the chief was paying a lot of attention to her, she wasn't considering him for a date. "Betty, you're exaggerating as usual. We have a purely working relationship. Sebastian is a very decent man." "Adriana, are you a fool or are you pretending to be? Decent people also want to love and be loved. But if I don't like Sebastian, what can I do with myself? Then at least have some decency. Respect him. Otherwise, when he shows up, your face looks like you've swallowed a lemon." Adriana didn't like her friend's tone or the subject. "Betty, why are you hiding for Sebastian's fate? You should be the one to take charge of him. He's imposing a bow on me, but he's not my type of man." Her friend looked at Adriana with a look that made her hot. "Like you're 17 years old. In a couple more years, you and I will be out of circulation. Men are more attracted to young girls. And those over 25, they pay attention to them on a sporadic basis. That's a fact. Number one. And about Sebastian, I'd love to take care of him if I was in his circle of interest." It was the first spat between childhood friends. For a while, they tried to keep their distance, and the resulting rift grew larger every day. One day, Sebastian invited the girls to his office. The girls received an unusual order from the wedding elite in style. "What do you think?" "We are up to the task." Betty, without hesitation, said, "It's not even worth the trouble." "Sebastian, you remember we've done something like this before. This is an unusual case. The client wants to fully, that is, to reflect the era a la 70s. This means that everything must correspond to that time. The entourage of the kitchen, the music, and he even wants the photo in black and white. We can do it all. I don't want to miss out on a job like this because it's a very substantial amount of money." Betty answered readily, "There will be no difficulty on my part." Sebastian turned to Adriana. "What does our photographer Sebastian Illich say? The task is difficult, but doable. I understand that the client wants total immersion, not stylization, as is common today." "Well, yes, he even emphasized it several times. Then I'll need period equipment, film, and more. The first item is fine because my father has a live Zenith camera. It's a professional camera in working order. But there is a problem with the film. I think we will address this issue. I have collectors among my friends who are obsessed with the Soviet era." Fifth unusual wedding. Adriana prepared as if the upcoming events would decide her fate. But most importantly, for the first time, both lifelines crossed, because there was an opportunity to fully satisfy a creative demand and earn good money at the same time. Although Adriana came in, she shoots quite a few weddings. This event struck her to the core. The immersion in the right time period was so deep and real that it became a little uncomfortable. The guests were delighted but also expressed concern. "We won't be stuck here forever, or I have to pick up my car from the repair shop tomorrow." Alone. An older man, already a little tipsy, shared his fantasies. "Personally, I like it all, and I would love to stay in that era for a week, especially since tomorrow is the 10th. And at our factory we used to get paid on those days. Imagine, I come to my native enterprise and go straight to the cash register. There'll be an uproar when it turns out that I'm a messenger from the future." The event, according to the idea of the organizers, was held on the territory of the estate of the groom's father. Therefore, all the guests felt relaxed and led naturally. Adriana worked enthusiastically, looking for favorable angles for each frame. At some point, she was so firmly immersed in the process that she involuntarily voiced her main fear. Man, I wish I hadn't accidentally exposed the film. This kind of footage. The girl did not expect that her cry of the soul would be heard. She shuddered when a soft baritone asked her where you, our dear photographer, got this rarity. The girl turned around and saw a young man with a hippie hairstyle in front of her. The guy was wearing a jacket in a large plaid, provocative green color, and pants, didachku. He was looking at the machine in the girl's hands with interest. The appearance of the young man Adriana somehow seemed ridiculous, and she laughed out loud. You accidentally did not run away from the set. The guy parried the young lady. I could ask you the same question. Adriana cast a fleeting glance at her second leg dress and almost choked with a new fit of laughter. The young man grabbed a glass of lemon from a nearby table and held it out to the injured woman. I really don't want to lose you in the first minutes of our acquaintance. Adriana took the couple sips. Have we met? I don't recall a moment like that. Unless we crossed paths in a previous life. The young man supported the joke. That's right. I didn't realize it at first. Why was I drawn to you so strongly? At first I thought that the Earth's gravity began to work in a different direction. Then I realized it was my past that was to blame. It's just a pity that everything has been erased from my memory, so I'll have to start all over again. Wouldn't you agree? The game of the past fascinated Adriana, and she readily answered yes, I'm Adriana. The guy in the plaid jacket gently shook the girl's outstretched hand. Kevin, I would like to kiss your hand, but such a liberty may be misunderstood by you and the people here. I hope to have the opportunity to do so again in the future. After all, fate has not accidentally tied our paths in such a knot at this wedding. By the way, the happy newlywed is my best friend. The velvet voice of Kevin acted on the girl like hypnosis. She agreed with everything her new acquaintance said. Adriana was so engrossed in the conversation with her new acquaintance that she forgot about work. Betty was watching the couple closely from the side. I think so. My girlfriend got caught in the net. We have to save the day. Kevin tried to cheer up the girl as much as he could. He sprinkled witticisms and decent anecdotes. Adriana responded to each pearl with whistling laughter. She was so engrossed in the conversation that she completely forgot about the terms of the contract with the customer. Betty decided to be indecent. She stood at full height in the middle of the path where the young men were strolling leisurely. Politely, but firmly enough, she asked her companion, "Do you mind if I deprive you of the company of this lovely young lady for a few minutes?" Kevin, in the same playful manner, replied, "Of course, but only for a couple minutes." Betty took Adriana aside. "Adriana, get on with your work, otherwise you are letting the whole team down. What's wrong with you? You just take one look at this handsome man and don't even dream about it. He's not your type. You know him. All I know is that his parents are rich. However, this wedding is only for high-flying birds. Go on, get to work." Betty was fixing Adriana's hair for some reason, and she felt her friend's hands trembling. It was the first wave of thawing after the unpleasant conversation. But Betty wasn't the only one who was disturbed by Adriana's new acquaintance. Sebastian also watched with pain and anxiety as the girl, whom he secretly loved with all his soul, was being groomed by an impudent major. The romance of Kevin and Adriana developed so rapidly that the changes in the behavior of his daughter noticed and David. "Adriana, what could have happened to make you walk like a moth?" "Of course you can, and I'm not privy to heartfelt secrets, but I'm worried about you." The girl kissed her father in the field. "Now I know what happiness is. I can even taste it, and I'm not going to hide anything from you because you're my best friend. I think I've met the one person every girl dreams of. That's pretty much it." David was expecting something like that, but for some reason, it didn't make him happy. "I'm not going to lecture you, but I'm worried about your mood of universal joy. Isn't it premature? You can't just trust your first impression of a person." "Oh, Dad, you're telling me all kinds of horrible things you're going to tell Mom." For your information, psychologists, on the contrary, believe that first impressions are the right ones. Kevin is a well-educated young man with proper manners. He makes me feel so at ease with him. That's why, as you noticed, I fly like a moth. And love not only opened the girl, it became a source of inspiration for her. Light-hearted summer smoothly turned into a thoughtful fall. And Adriana wanted to convey this unusual mood in her works. She spent whole days in the neighborhoods of the city, looking for interesting places for shooting. And Kevin accompanied her. Once a young man jokingly remarked, "I am your faithful to the cameras carries." However, by modern standards, this is a very honorable role. Someday, many years later, I will accidentally find myself at the exhibition of an unknown artist and see familiar landscapes. Why unknown Kevin? Where will I be many years from now? The confusion lasted no more than a few seconds. Kevin had a knack for quickly extricating himself from the most awkward situations. "My baby will always be with me. It's a done deal. High up in the sky, and the exhibition is years away. Can't you imagine? It's a whole detective story. Your work will be appropriated by another man, and you will be kidnapped, but I'll recognize your pictures and help the investigation. It's called getting away with it. I don't like your story, but I'll forgive you for once." Kevin knelt down. "My queen. I will try harder from now on and be sure to shine with my talent." Adriana laughed heartily at Kevin's every joke. It seemed to her that their whole future life would consist of such sweet moments. So she didn't pay much attention to the conclusions of Betty, who had taken the initiative to gather information about her lover. A friend called her cell phone. "Adriana, can you come to my place?" "Yes, as soon as Kevin is free." Betty interrupted her with undisguised irritation. "I need to talk to you one-on-one." "Okay, I'll be right there." Half an hour later, Adriana was sitting in the cozy kitchen of her best friend's apartment. It was noticeable that Betty was hesitant to start a conversation. She stirred her tea with a small spoon for a long time, and her pensive gaze was fixed on the window. Adriana could not stand it. "You insisted on this meeting, and you yourself are silent." "Yes, I'm sorry. It's just hard for me to talk to you about it." "Why?" "I'm afraid you'll misunderstand me. But I'm really worried about you. I mean, you're like my own sister, Adriana." "Likewise. So just tell it like it is and don't worry. I'll do my best to understand." "I will. It's better for you to find out sooner. Although nothing's really happened yet. But my personal agency found out what kind of vegetable your Kevin is. No, don't worry. He's not a bad guy. But in his family, his mom runs things. That's modern-day Cuban. She's a businesswoman who keeps her men in line. And she herself is not a breed. But they cleverly screwed over Kevin's father when he was young and in love. There was some drama in their family. And as a result, Kevin's grandfather passed the business to his daughter-in-law instead of his son. Now you can feel the lady's full name. There's 1 billion, if not 1 trillion in her hands. And what is the connection to me and Kevin here? The most direct. Kathy will decide who her only son should marry. This is so medieval. That can't happen in this day and age. Yes, it can. It's my job to warn you. If he really loves you, he'll do anything to stay with you. For example, you could sign secretly and then let the despot mother know. Can't we just go somewhere together? I mean, your Kevin has a good education, and they say he doesn't just sit around in an office. Adriana did not tell Kevin about the conversation with her friend, and then forgot about it. The couple spent the weekend at a camping site, where besides them, there was an elderly married couple. For 2 days, Kevin did not answer the calls, from which the cell phone burst. "My mom lost me. By the way, I am already 28 years old, and I have every right to a private life." This phrase was not addressed to Adriana. She immediately realized that Kevin, even at a distance, was talking to his mother. The girl pretended not to notice these words. All day long, she was ecstatically shooting nature from her favorite. Against the backdrop of the sad fall evening, Adriana asked Kevin as if casually, "I've got so much here, about 100 shots. Please help me select the 10 shots that you think are the best. What do you say? If it's no secret, why do you want to participate in another contest?" "I haven't had any luck lately. I don't even know what it is." "If you want, I can get you a solo show." "I don't want to, Kevin. I'm always in favor of honest decisions, especially in art." I'm of the opinion that money can't buy talent. And my dad always taught me that. I don't quite agree with you. Talent should be helped, and talentless people will make it on their own. Alas, but that's life. I've done what you asked. I think these 10 pictures are the best you've ever done. Kevin held out a stack of photos, and Adriana was silent again, even though she knew he was right. Her abilities required a broader format than a wedding. But all the work the girl had sent to contests, she had been sent back with terse reviews. What lacked skill or originality? Today, Kathy was in a foul mood. And it was all because of her son, Kevin. The news, which was presented to her on a silver platter by her friend Christina, shocked Kathy, and the information about her son's adventures did not contain anything unusual. But it was the way Christina presented it that pissed her off. It happened over tea. Kathy liked to organize a tea ceremony at her place and asked for such an occasion her housekeeper, Aunt Clara, to prepare a drink on a special recipe. As soon as Christina appeared on the horizon, the women rushed into the kitchen. In 20 years of working in the house, the business is smaller. Aunt Clara had learned to guess what the hostess wanted by looking at her. But she also had another trait, a good ear. Even thick walls were no barrier for the housekeeper. She was also able to read lips because she had experience in a boarding school for deaf-mute children. So went into the house with proudly raised head past the trunk Christina, which Aunt Clara frankly did not digest. She immediately tuned her hearing to perceive the new information. Since the door of the living room, where the hostess always sang Ochi, was open, Aunt Slaga heard in every detail the conversation of her friends. The guest expressed her displeasure from the threshold. Cindy, I heard a rumor that your Kevin is having an affair with some girl. Anatoly's officiating weddings. Whether they're taking pictures or not, I didn't get the details. And I don't need to. Not a muscle on Kathy's face. I don't know what people are saying. If you believe all the rumors, you could go crazy. So you're not denying it, and I'm not confirming it. Kevin is a grown man, and he needs to blow off steam sometimes. Pardon the lingo. Aunt Clara, where's the tea? The housekeeper realized that it was her turn to come out and deftly picked up the trays with the checkers and the kettle with jam. The living room was immediately filled with a pleasant aroma. The mood of the guests changed. Your woman makes a terrific tea. You'll let me borrow her for a couple of days. Aunt Clara wanted to hit the guest in the forehead, so she wouldn't make a vulnerable lady, but the hostess beat her to it. Christina, you've forgotten that serfdom was abolished in Russia. If my memory serves me correctly in 1860 according to the new calculus. That's why Aunt Clara works for us on a salary. What's your habit of clinging to words? I was speaking figuratively. I even complimented your cook, and you threw my face on the table. You're the one with the hotel speech, Christina. Why are you in such a bad mood? The guest asked for Aunt Clara, and she silently left, but she left the door open. Christina whispered loudly, what kind of mood do you think I'm in if your Kevin has a fling with some chick? And my Lisa avoids my Lisa's company. The girl calls him every day. He's an asshole. He hangs up on her. What's that supposed to mean? Well, the girl thing is a bit of a stretch. Your Lisa is overheating. So don't give me any righteous indignation. And about this girl you're talking about, I'll check it out. Soak up the information. Aunt Clara was waiting for Kevin. The boy had grown up practically in front of her eyes, and the woman had maternal feelings for him. Kevin returned the favor, but he was especially grateful to the housekeeper for the fact that she always warned him about the family gatherings and stampedes that Kathy liked to organize. But this time the mistress was ahead of her. She first spotted Kevin's car pulling up and went out to meet him, which had never happened before. Although Aunt Clara was very worried about Kevin, curiosity got the best of her. It's gonna be episode 2 of Santa Barbara, and it's a shame the kid's gonna ruin his son's life. But contrary to expectations, the employee's house. Kathy affectionately asked her son about his business. Kevin gave a brief report on the current situation in the company. He was about to leave, but his mother stopped him. I hear you're seeing a girl. Kevin was confused. Is it forbidden? Why do you have to get all needly on me? I just feel bad that I'm the last to know about such an important change in my son's life. Tell me who she is, what she does. Or are you just hanging out with her to pass the time? Kathy tried to speak casually to get her son to talk frankly, and Kevin immediately took the bait. He sat down next to his mother and began to tell her about Adriana. By the look on his face and the words he used in his speech, the woman realized that the son was head over heels in love with this unknown Adriana. I hope you will meet your father, your chosen one. Kevin clearly did not expect such a turn. Of course, you will certainly like her. Adriana is very talented and kind. Kathy tightened her duty smile. Okay, I believe you, son. So invite your girlfriend to come visit us. Kevin flew in 2 leaps to the second floor where his room was located. His father was just about to come downstairs for dinner and was surprised at his son's quickness. Kevin, did you take on animals? Like a goat? No, Dad, and I'm just a little happy. Sam muttered good-naturedly. Well, it's not dangerous. I wanted to call an ambulance to get you a shot for the raging net. Adriana immediately sensed something wrong. When Kevin had invited her over, she remembered how unflattering Betty had been to his mother. Kevin, why don't we postpone this visit? Silly. Why put off what's inevitable? I've been to your house before, and in case you've forgotten, I asked your parents for their blessing for our marriage. But my parents are one thing. How your parents would feel about me, I don't know. Don't put bad thoughts in their pretty little heads. My folks are normal people. Adriana agreed. But a bad feeling did not leave her. But all these fears the girl wrote off to her delicate position. Quite recently, she realized that she was pregnant. But about this circumstance, she did not tell anyone. When they will be sure, then I'll tell you. On the eve of meeting Kevin's parents, the girl felt quite bad. She already wanted to cancel the event, but the promise given to the groom did not allow her to retreat. Be that as it may, Kevin will think that I chickened out. To the surprise of the girl at the dinner party, in addition to her, other guests arrived. So Adriana was immediately lost under the stares and not very friendly looks. Strangers asked her about her family, work, and other things, and she felt uncomfortable in front of this society, but she especially tried. Christina is a friend of Kevin's mother. When Adriana's fork slipped out of her hand during dinner, the honorable lady said very loudly, "Unfortunately, not all people today know how to handle cutlery." My Cindy in London was trained in etiquette. Adriana barely waited until the meal was over and immediately politely declined. Kevin tried to stop her. "Adriana, where are you going?" "Thank you for dinner, but I have to go." Kevin rushed to see the girl off. They were silent the whole way, only at the entrance of their house. Adriana asked, "Why didn't you say anything? Don't you realize that your mother was giving me a spanking?" Kevin tried to justify Kathy's actions. "You little boy, you got it all wrong, don't you?" "Yes, my mom has a bad temper, but she doesn't want to hurt anyone." On the contrary, she was very happy when she found out that I have a girl with whom I am ready to tie my fate. Believe me, everything will be fine with you. Adriana really wanted to believe that, but the events of the following days shattered her expectation. When Kevin returned home, the guests were gone. Only Kathy was waiting for her son in the living room. His father showed up later. Kevin realized that now there was going to be an unpleasant conversation, and he was not wrong, as usual. The mother was the first to speak. "I didn't expect my son to have such disgusting taste. Or are you completely blind?" "Kevin, I don't understand you, Mom. Are you really going to marry that girl?" Sam decided to stand up for her son. "She's a nice girl, polite. After all, it's not your mother's place to live with her, and you're never asked. If you like her, you can keep your opinion. But I won't let my son marry a mere wench with no lineage." Kevin felt a wave of indignation rising inside him for as long as he could remember. His mother kept pushing him and his father, and he got tired of obeying her. So he decided to speak his mind. "Mom, I'm not a boy anymore. No one gave you the right to humiliate the girl I love, and even under your pressure, I won't back down. Her parents, unlike you, didn't put me under a microscope. They accepted me as family and blessed us." Kathy abruptly got up from the couch, and the tea utensils with a clinking sound rolled on the glass surface of the coffee table. And they wouldn't be happy to get such a son-in-law for the poor. This is unprecedented luck, a fairy tale. Sam tried to get a word in edgewise again, Cindy, why would you do that? You don't even know the girl's parents, and by humiliating them, Sam will shut up too. This place is sick enough without you, and you're making your remarks. I've said my word. If you go to the registry office with this Adriana, I'll take everything away from you, Kevin, so you'll realize that I don't throw words around. Give me the car keys and the gold card. Kevin was about to reach into his pocket for the keys, but imagined how he would get to the office tomorrow on public transportation with the card. He didn't feel like parting with it either, and his righteous anger, caused by Adriana's mother's unfair attitude, quietly hid somewhere in the corner of his soul. His father watched his son in silence, expecting him to act like a man. But Kevin stood in front of his mother in indecision. His head slumped. Sam stood up and spat under his son's feet. Wimp. Adriana waited for Kevin to call, but the phone was silent. 2 days passed, but the groom did not give Lissa any signs. This state of affairs did not suit the girl. And on the third day, she called him herself. Kevin answered right away. His voice was full of joy. "Baby, I'm glad you called. I got a full zoo at work. I wanted to call you yesterday, but you don't have a minute to spare. How's your time? Maybe we should get together." Kevin, yeah, we should get together to dot all the I's and cross all the T's. It was pouring rain outside, so the lovers secluded themselves in a small but cozy restaurant. Kevin acted as if nothing had happened. "Are you having dinner? What do you want to order?" At the mention of food, Adriana felt nauseous and waved her hands. "No, I'm not hungry. Not just a glass of mineral water. I'll have something to eat. I've been on my feet all day." Adriana had gotten to know Kevin well enough to know what kind of conversation he was trying to hide his excitement. "Kevin, let's not waste time. I want to hear from you what's going to happen to us now." The young man chuckled unpleasantly. "It's going to be okay. Baby, believe me, you will definitely get married. But we have to wait a little longer." The girl could not believe that these treacherous words are said by a man who only a few days ago was for her the standard of a real man. "Kevin, what are you saying when later?" "Baby, you understand. It's not that simple. I'm in a very difficult situation, and you have to wait for everything to dissolve. You see, that's the way it is in life. You don't have to work hard. Kevin, I get it. I wish you happiness. And your mom too." Adriana could barely hold back her tears. The resentment was burning her heart, and she hurried home to give vent to her tears and despair. But no sooner had she crossed the threshold of the apartment than the doorbell rang, and Kathy stood in front of her with a haughty look. "I can enter your chambers. Please come in." "No, I won't come in. There's no need. I only dropped in for a few minutes, Adriana, to ask you a favor." "I'm listening." "Look, Adriana, you realize that Kevin needs a different kind of girl than you can give my son. Love, loyalty, caring." Kathy said with irritation. "Those are just words. They're not backed up by anything. You can't base a marriage on that. Love and romance fades very quickly, and then it's business as usual. My Kevin has never needed anything. He has a very refined nature. You just can't stand to be around him. Leave him alone. Do you want me to give you some money? Even so. And if I don't want to keep him, what then?" Kevin's mother's voice sounded different. It was clearly threatening. "Then you're tainted, no doubt about it. You'll get a taste of real revenge from the family. I will never let you cross the threshold of my house. Unless as a servant you can do so. But you will never be my son's lawful wife. I hope you heard me." Kathy left, with a loud slam of the door. Everything she'd been through in the past few days came rushing back to her. She locked herself in her room so as not to disturb her parents and cried until morning. Betty didn't expect Adriana to show up at such an early hour. "Are you all out of sorts? Is something wrong?" "Betty, honey, you're my friend. The worst thing has happened to me, and I'm just now realizing how right you were, and I didn't listen to you. You need to calm down, and then you need to calm down. Tell me everything in order." Betty was saddened by her friend's story. She did not reproach her for her thoughtlessness and gullibility, but simply asked, "What are you going to do now? How do you think to get out of the situation?" "I'll leave. I can't be in this town, and know that Kevin is around. But you can't survive on your own with a baby." At least your parents are here. I'm not ashamed to look them in the eye. All right, girlfriend, don't despair. People don't get into this kind of trouble and survive. You have to use your brains. At the train station, Adriana was accompanied by her parents and Betty. Her friend kept looking around as if she was waiting for someone. And David was giving his daughter a final farewell. You, daughter, when you get settled, call me right away. It's good that they'll give you a place to live. There's a shortage of doctors and teachers in the countryside. That's why they attract them with housing. It's okay. You'll work for a while and come back to town. Dad, I'll definitely come back. And I won't give up photography. They say it's a wonderful place. There's room for creativity. Won't it be hard for you to get back into the profession? Dad, it's only been 2 years since I left school, so I remember everything. The main thing is that you don't worry about me. Citizens, passengers, please take your seats according to your tickets. In 2 minutes, we'll be leaving. The conductor gave the attendants a disgruntled look. And at that moment, Adriana noticed Sebastian running on the platform, not paying attention to the indignation of the conductor. The man jumped into the car. Just in time. Didn't Betty warn you? No. What did she have to warn me about? I decided to take a little train ride. I'm in for a miracle too. You don't mind my company. While Adriana was recovering, the conductor came running. Citizen, I'm talking to you. What's this unauthorized behavior? I don't want no tickets in the car. Sebastian smiled broadly. I have a ticket. The woman asked incredulously for the 5th carriage. Imagine being in the 5th. Honestly, I myself did not expect that I was given a ticket at the ticket office in that particular carriage. We're such a pretty flight attendant. Compliments melt the heart. Women, you have me confused with a stewardess, and I'm more and more afraid of the sky on the ground. Sebastian walked confidently into the compartment and helped Adriana carry in her luggage. You just don't think about anything bad. When you have black thoughts in your head, life also has a dark streak. Sebastian, but why the sacrifice? You don't know. No. I've loved you since the first day I saw you. Don't say anything. And you listen to me. I don't want anything from you, and I'll never interfere in your life if you want me to. You're hounding me. But as long as you're in a difficult position, I have to protect you. I think any decent man would do the same. The train picked up speed, taking Adriana to the unfamiliar town of Chodova. She didn't know what awaited her there, but she believed that all troubles were in the past. And she also thought about the fact that she was running away from her failed love. But by pure coincidence, Sebastian, who has been in love with her for a long time, is next to her. David glanced unhappily toward the kitchen. He had just had another unpleasant conversation with his mother, and he was trying to control his emotions. Remembering the coach's advice, he repeated aloud, I close my eyes and take 3 deep breaths. 1, 2, 3. David, are you reading something? I hope you're not holding a dangerous object. The boy again looked unkindly in the direction his mother's voice was coming from. Mom, you think I'm an idiot and talk to me like I'm a 5-year-old. Adriana realized that contradictions were stirring in her son's soul. She approached him and tried to hug him. But the teenager pulled away, muttering something inaudible and to himself. Adriana looked at her son and marveled at how quickly he had grown up. The constant workload and hobby left almost no free time. That's why Sebastian took care of her son almost from the first day of his birth. But now he was gone. Adriana shifted her gaze to the photo in the morning frame. Sebastian was smiling broadly, as if sending them and David greetings. From such a recent past, the son followed his mother's gaze. I'll probably never get used to the idea that my father is gone. He was the main person in my life. Of course, Mom, you're the main thing too, but Father. That's why I don't want to leave here. Adriana felt her throat suddenly dry. Tears spontaneously flowed from her eyes. David, I don't want to leave either, but you and I need a change of scenery. Life goes on, and you and I have to live. The boy said thoughtfully, and Dad always said that life is an obligation, not a gift to be spent at will. You know, Mom, when I go to his grave, it makes me feel better. I often feel like he's there to hear me. Son, Daddy really does hear everything, and he's watching over you and me. And he would be very unhappy with your mood right now. Believe me, he'll always be there for you. Even in Moscow. Anywhere in the world, son, I miss my daddy too. You have no idea how empty my heart is. He did so much for me and you. It's a pity that such people leave us so early. Adriana cried, and David tried to comfort his mother. Don't cry. I won't get on your nerves anymore. I promise. If you say we should leave, I won't object. It's just a pity. Friends and a new school I don't want to go to. It's the last year left. Adriana didn't want to tear the boy down at first either, but she had to make a tough decision. Because of his father's illness, David came down with a serious illness. The mother couldn't cope alone. David is another loss I just can't physically bear. My father has always been and remains, as you put it, the most important person to me. And I'm asking you to understand. David understood his mother perfectly. He liked his grandfather very much himself, although his relationship with his grandmother was quite tolerable. Only Grandma was overprotective of her grandson, and Grandpa talked to him as an equal. He liked to spend his summer vacations at the Dakshut in the Moscow region, where the old people grew all sorts of useful vegetation. His father had bought this small but very cozy house for them. David was very young at the time, but I remember well how the old people thanked their son-in-law for such a generous gift. Sebastian, we don't even have words. We have worked all our lives, but could not save for a summer house. And you gave us such a royal gift. Sebastian laughed then. Tsars usually gave their subjects whole villages. They also gave them noble status for their services. I only gave you a small house. I grew up without parents. My grandmother raised me, but she's long gone. So you're the only relatives I have. David was packing his things, but his mind was on something else. The guy was trying to understand why things in life don't work out the way he wants them to. Adriana was also trying to answer that question. The parallels that her father used to talk about when she was in despair and thought that her life was over. Sebastian appeared. He left the capital for her and moved to the provinces. When he found out she was going to have a child, he did not hesitate and said, "You can rely on me. I will never hurt your child, and I will treat it as my own." Sebastian kept his promise. For the first time in Chudovo, they lived as ordinary neighbors. They married when David was 4 years old. Only after Sebastian's death, Adriana realized that the years lived with him were the happiest. They say that misfortune comes from where you don't expect it. Sebastian had always maintained a healthy lifestyle. He ran every day, went to the gym, and took up residence in the winter. There were his successes in business, so the family lived large. But one day, the man returned from a business trip with a high fever. Adriana, he must have gotten some kind of infection on the trip. You give me some heat pills and it'll go away. But the next day, Sebastian got worse. He started choking. They had to call an ambulance. For a week, doctors fought for the life of the patient, who was diagnosed with bilateral blue pneumonia. They assured Adriana, "Your husband has a strong organism, he will surely cope." But the doctor's predictions failed. On the 5th day, his kidneys failed, and another 24 hours later, Sebastian was gone. When Adriana got the call from the hospital, she couldn't believe it. How could it be? There must be some mistake. The doctor said that the man was a strong organism, but here it was a banal pneumonia. The nurse's sad voice replied, "I'm sorry, but sometimes healthy people die of the common cold." 2 months had passed since Sebastian's death. Adriana Lisa couldn't get used to the fact that he was gone. Everything in their spacious apartment reminded her of him. A favorite chair in the living room, a small gym on the loggia, even room slippers. In the former place awaited the appearance of the master. Living in such an environment was unbearable, and Adriana began to think about moving. Her father's sudden illness accelerated the process. But the most striking was that shortly before the death of her husband, Adriana was offered to organize a solo exhibition of her work in one of the capital's Adriaperi. And the other day she was informed that the event would take place in a month. This was another reason to move. Adriana could not miss such a chance because Sebastian had invested too much in promoting her talent. Adriana had already had several successful exhibitions abroad. The first time was almost by chance. Sebastian had a visiting partner from Switzerland, They decided to sit at Sebastian's home. As soon as the partner entered, he was lost. He spent more than an hour wandering from picture to picture, which were hanging everywhere. Some he stopped at for long periods of time. Some he looked at quickly. "Tell me, Sebastian, where'd you get this? It's not commercial, and I can see that." Sebastian smiled. His partner used to live here, and when the bad years came, he worked as a farmer, and after saving some money, he went abroad, where he continued to make a fortune. Which, by the way, he did quite well. "This is Adriana, my wife. She is very fond of photography. She studied it. But unfortunately, in this city, there is almost no opportunity to turn around, although she has so many works that will be enough for more than one exhibition." That's when the proposal to start conquering the world from abroad was made. The very first exhibition was there. Sebastian laid out a round sum to help in the organization, even though the partner offered to do everything himself. And then exhibitions, sales, rave reviews. Sebastian believed in her the most, and she didn't let him down. Adriana was offered several times to take photos for the most fashionable international magazines, but for this she had to live abroad. She refused without regret. She belonged here in her homeland. Kevin waited outside Kelly's gymnasium and kept glancing at his watch to see where she was being carried. "I'm running out of time." More recently, the wayward Kathy had handed over the reins of the holding company to her son after his marriage to Lisa. The daughter of his mother's best friend decided to merge the two companies. At first, experts took this bold venture disapprovingly. How can you combine such different spheres of activity? But adamant in such matters, Kathy still insisted on her own. After Kevin's marriage, her relationship with her son warmed. The birth of her granddaughter, Kelly, finally melted the heart of the iron businesswoman. But Kevin could not forget Adriana for a long time. He experienced her departure hard and was very sorry that he had acted with her out of conscience. He tried to find her, but it was too late. Adriana's response to his call was harsh. "Don't ever call me or try to meet me. You don't exist for me anymore." Kevin had prepared an explanatory speech in advance, but the girl wouldn't even listen to him. Of course, he dialed the familiar number several more times, but the colorless voice of the operator answered him all the time. "The number you dialed does not exist." Kevin realized that Adriana had changed the number. He didn't dare to visit the girl's parents because it was embarrassing to look into the eyes of David. The wedding with Lisa was more like an elaborate torture than a happy event. The bride laughed with joy and talked nonstop the whole time. In the midst of the celebration, Kevin for a moment thought that in the crowd of guests flashed a familiar figure of a girl with a camera. He roughly pushed Lisa's hand away and rushed off in search of his Adriana. His act then was condemned by all the ladies present. Therefore, married life with an unloved girl did not go well from the very first day. Kevin carefully avoided privacy with his wife. She reproached him for failure to fulfill his marital duty. Once he spied his wife drunk to the point of unconsciousness, and in this form appeared in her bedroom. Details of that night Kevin did not remember, but a month later Lisa, with happy smiles, told him about the pregnancy. After parting with Adriana, Kevin stopped thinking about his words and actions. He treated other people in the same way. Indifferently, he took the news that he would soon become a father. Everything changed when he first picked up the pink cool envelope with a tiny creature in it. A heart. Men shuddered at something. It was as if a volcano that had been sleeping for centuries had awakened. Kevin spent every spare minute by his young daughter's crib. He made funny faces at her and enjoyed Kelly's long, hearty laugh. The girl grew up in his arms, learning to talk and walk, and he watched his baby lovingly. Lisa was openly jealous of his daughter. "Kevin, I get the impression you're doing all this on purpose to annoy me. After all, who's the mom in this family, me or you? Why are you so annoyed that I pay attention to my daughter?" Lisa grinned caustically. "That's what surprises her, that you pay no attention to me at all. You even skimp on simple human words. And I, like any normal woman, need affection and love." But Kevin Lisa could not overpower himself and treat his wife more gently. Lisa felt it and also began to avoid his company. The situation was resolved when the wife's mother decided to move to her son in London. Christina all her life dreamed of visiting the capital of Great Britain. And now her youthful dream has finally come true. No sooner had Lisa seen her mother off than she declared, "I have to go to London too. My mom has health problems, I'm afraid for her." Kevin was very surprised by his wife's plans. "But your brother is there, he'll look after the old lady." Lisa exploded like a snake bite. "Don't you talk about my mother in such a derogatory way. She's the envy of many young women." "Lisa, you're contradicting yourself. One minute you're talking about your mom's poor health. One minute you're saying she's a role model for others. You're inconsistent, and that's what worries me. I wonder why. Because it's characteristic of deviant people." This was already over the top for a blatant insult. Lisa burst into foul, swear words. Kevin listened and laughed in her face. When Lisa had run out of eloquence, he calmly asked, "Will you sell it?" Lisa thought, not even embarrassed. "Sure. Let her stay with you for a while. She's too young for long trips." But a short trip turned into a permanent residence in London. At first, for the sake of decency, his wife still regularly sent short messages with smiley faces, and then began to call once a month. About 2 years ago, Lisa suddenly appeared in person. "Kevin, I'm sorry, but I've met a man with whom I immediately fell in love." Kevin replied indifferently, "Congratulations. What do you want me to do? Don't play dumb. I want a divorce, and of course I expect all the preferential treatment I'm entitled to." Kevin laughed heartily. "Lisa, you're not getting anything. My clever Kathy has done everything, so I can only willingly transfer the shares of the holding company to another person. One of those people is you, Lisa, and I'm sorry to be so frank. That was a low blow." Lisa's eyes widened in incomprehension. "But why?" "We have a daughter, Kelly. I came to get her." "Mom, I'm not going anywhere with you. I'm better off with Daddy." The arguing parents didn't notice how the girl slipped into the living room where the verbal battle was taking place. Lisa shouted, "You're all conspiring here, but I won't leave it like this. I am a mother and my daughter has to stay with me. Kelly is 13 years old now, and she should decide who she wants to stay with. She's made her choice, and you have to accept it." So nothing. Lisa drove back to London. Kevin was so absorbed in his memories that he didn't notice Kelly coming to the car. "Daddy, did you fall asleep in there?" "Sorry, my daughter. I was just thinking." The girl dived into the salon and capriciously noticed you. "Dad, do not understand. It drives me that you sit with such a face, as if you got into a parallel world." "You guessed it, Kelly, mine. I just had a similar experience. While I was waiting for you. How are you doing?" That's when the girl perked up. "Dad, you know there's a new kid in our gymnasium today who's so cute. And his outfit is cool. I wonder if he'll be in your class in the 11th grade. The girls told me in confidence that he has cool parents. What I don't get is how a dude from the suburbs has cool parents. I don't understand how a decent girl can be so rude. Oh, Dad, I almost forgot." The girls were saying that this new guy, Mom's either an artist or a photographer. She's really cool. I'll find out more later and let you know if you're interested. Daughter, I'm not interested in anything that occupies you. That evening, Kelly told her grandmother everything in detail. But Kathy was not at all interested in the unknown boy from the province, and she did not pay much attention to her granddaughter's words. David liked it very much. In the new school, his peers unexpectedly well received him, and his manner of dressing played no small part. A long time ago, 3 years ago, maybe more, when David was going out for a walk, Sebastian stopped him. "David, where are you going?" "I'm going for a walk." "Me and the guys will go to the embankment, sit, and you go like this." David didn't understand him. "What's wrong, Dad?" "But I think you're wearing yesterday's t-shirt, and those pants don't go well with it." David looked at himself and then asked Dad, "I'm not a girl. What difference does it make what I'm wearing?" "Well, yes, a t-shirt should be worn with a sporty style, or at least this one. But I don't think anyone's gonna pay that much attention. That one, you're wrong. I've always said it's right to treat a man for who he is on the inside. But if you remember the proverb, it starts with the clothes on your back. Think about it. Maybe you should meet a friend or girlfriend in your life today. Well, here are the most perfect ones, but they will pass you by because a person who disrespects themselves and their appearance may treat others the same way. You and I both know that's not true, and you're a good person, but they don't know that yet, right? David thought a lot about that conversation. Sebastian had managed to convince him that a man should look decent at all times, not just when he wanted to. The guy didn't become a stylist, but he'd been trying to dress up ever since, stylishly fashionable. It turns out that it was not so difficult. Plus, his innate taste helped him a lot. The 2 weeks he'd already been going to his new school had flown by like a day. Yes, the guys in the capital were much more liberated. But David had long ago decided for himself that he had his own life line. He would not try everything just to seem cool. He had Sebastian in front of him. He has his grandfather. And both are worthy examples. When the class realized that David wasn't going to buckle down just to be on good terms with everyone. Logically, he should have been bullied. But that's where it made a big difference. The fact that David didn't come from an easy family, that they had money, and the mom's a celebrity. It seemed that David was more fashionable, smarter. And if he's rich, he's cooler. And the cooler one dictates the rules. Except David wasn't going to dictate anything. It turned out there was no one to fight with. So the guys just accepted David for who he was. They also respected him for having his own point of view, for knowing what he wants. Kelly, you're gonna break your eyes. Lisa stood next to her friend and looked at her mockingly. Kelly flinched. She hadn't noticed Lisa walk up. What are you talking about? I was just thinking. Of course you were. And all your brooding centered on the new guy. God, what's wrong with that? It's not like he's a freak to turn your back on. Besides, I've heard the guys say he's real, not an upstart. Well, I don't know how he's not an upstart like that. Lisa, are you crazy? How many times have I told you to watch your fashion sense a little bit? Why? Let other people do it. They're paid to do it. Lisa came from a very wealthy family. Her mother had a chain of large outliers that brought in a good income, and her father was a car salesman. When the mother realized that it would not be possible to instill taste in her daughter, she simply hired someone like a nanny who kept an eye on what the girl wore. How does that count? Yes, the money is not small, but some was necessary because the girl was not distinguished by special beauty, but the opinion, or rather, self-importance above the roof. Although, Lisa looked thoughtfully at David, who was standing at the window and talking to another guy. You're right, of course, he's very interesting. Kelly had always been a fun person to be around, and not just in class. In fact, she liked to experiment with things to keep her from getting bored. And she had an amazing ability to keep others involved and entertained. One thing that pleased Kevin was that so far these entertainments had been harmless. She gave Miranda a sly look. Lisa, let's get to know him better. Take him on a tour, tell him about Moscow. Are you crazy? Not at all. She grabbed Miranda and dragged her towards David, who was already alone. Lisa looked at her friend with frightened eyes and even forgot to resist. Hi. Kelly looked at the guy defiantly. David smiled. He had noticed this pretty girl a couple of days ago, and something told him that they would meet soon. And the girl just had a kind of cheerful, fun-loving vibe about her. How are you? We wanted to offer to take a walk and show you Moscow. Well, the most interesting parts of it, if you haven't already seen it all for yourself. Yeah, I kind of know Moscow. My grandparents live here. There was a look of disappointment on Kelly's face. He immediately added, but only at the level of a tourist. It is clear that I may not know about the existence of interesting places. Anyway, they got to know each other, got to talking. The change was big, but Kelly didn't even notice how the time passed. The bell rang, and the girl turned around looking for her friend. But Nikki wasn't there. David said, If you're looking for your girlfriend, she oriented herself back at the beginning of our conversation. Kelly sighed. Now she's going to take offense. Now she's going to take offense to what? She left on her own. No one chased her away. Kelly smiled. Okay, I'm going to run. David wanted to stop her to ask when the tour would be, but Kelly was already gone. He just shook his head and smiled. What girl? Lisa looked at Kelly with angry eyes. Nico, why did you run away? Kelly pretended to be genuinely interested in the question. Nico hissed angrily. and it's like you noticed I was gone. Lissa don't start, but Lissa turned away resentfully. At another time, she would have even made sure to disgorge her. But now she didn't feel like it. She wanted to think about David and only him. For the rest of the day, the girls never made up. Kelly didn't insist. She could see Lisa was angry. After class, they went outside by the porch, shifting from foot to foot. David. Kelly, she waved cheerfully. Her dad was supposed to be waiting for her outside the gate, but she couldn't leave. Not without talking to David as well. Daddy, I'm going out with the girls tomorrow. What's that for? Tell me where you want to go. The driver will take you. But no, Daddy. We want to wander around old Moscow, give ourselves some kind of tour. Kevin wanted to be indignant, but then, looking carefully at his daughter, he suddenly smiled. I'd like to ask you one thing. If you're not going to walk the new guy, Kelly blurted out. His name is David, and not to walk him, but to show him the city. Realizing that she had given herself up, she clung to her father. Daddy, he's so nice, so serious. He's new to the school, and already everyone respects him. Very interesting. Well, since he's all so positive, maybe after the tour, you'll come over for a cup of tea. Kelly shook his head apprehensively. No, I know for a fact he won't go. Besides, why would he? I mean, we've only just met him. You know, Dad, he's a bit like you, isn't he? He's just as nice. Kevin could barely keep a straight face. I thought to myself, God forbid he should be like me. He'd been thinking about Adriana a lot lately. I wondered how his life would have turned out if he hadn't been so cowardly. Perhaps he would have been happier. But then he'd have nothing. On the other hand, maybe Kelly would have been born to him and Adriana. Mom hadn't made any more attempts to marry him after he'd been dumped by his nondescript wife, her protege. And lately, Kathy seemed to have calmed down a bit. A little tired, maybe. He let Kelly go, but before he did, he tried to gently remind her that she was still a child. But Kelly laughed back. Daddy, what are you talking about? I know everything. And I need you to understand that David and I are just friends. Okay, I'm glad you're smart. And David did invite us over for a visit. You know, like this weekend. I need to know who my daughter's friends are. Adriana and Betty were sitting in a coffee shop. Adriana, you have no idea how happy I am for you, and I'm so glad you're back like David. You know, Betty, when we got here, I was kind of scared. But the more we've been here, the more fun Dad's been. Mommy says it feels like we're on his medication. Betty said seriously. Do you really think it could be any other way? The medicine is you, David. Is that all the joy he has left in his life? Parents don't get any younger, you know. Yeah, I get it. It's just so hard to realize. So how's David? How's he doing at his new school? Adriana's revitalized. You know, I was so nervous about the last year of school, with the age of transition and all that. But it's going surprisingly well. He's excited about school, about his classmates. And the best part is, he's got some girl there. They go out almost every day. She shows him around Moscow. David says she's not only smart, but she's insanely beautiful. Wow, isn't it a little early? She laughed next. I said the same thing. And he made huge eyes and said they were just friends. I can see his eyes light up when he talks about her. Well, it's the early generation now. Who is? Betty, do you really think I'm going to see them before I make inquiries? Why don't you tell me how you're doing? We haven't really talked much in all this time. Just bits and pieces. How's the new husband? Betty laughed. Adriana, what new husband? He's 3 years old, and I kicked him out. Betty was married for the 4th time. And as it turned out, not again. How you put it out? Adriana looked at her in surprise. You said I love you, I can't, but I loved you so much. And that's enough. Betty stretched gracefully and bent over. And Adriana thought, well, Betty loves life and all of it. Adriana, wherever you are. You know it won't be long before I'm in love again. The friends laughed. David took a good look at himself. Mom, how are you? Adriana came out of the kitchen. Grandma followed. Well, it's good. Really good. Mom, it's true. Kelly's got some super rich family over there. David, if you're not confident in your abilities, maybe you shouldn't go to a stranger's house. Not for my mom. Her dad's very concerned. His desire to see me is very valid. He could just forbid Kelly from going out with me. Adriana smiled. You're all grown up. Now David looked at her in embarrassment. Can I invite Kelly over later too? Of course you can, but not until after the exhibition. It's in 3 days, so it won't be that long. Okay. Thank you. Kathy threw David a scathing glance, which Kevin immediately noticed. So Mom remembered that she was the boss. We'd have to take the initiative before she said something. He extended his hand to the guy, who, it should be noted, held it with dignity. Kevin, nice to meet you. Kathy pressed his lips together, realizing his son's intent. But she was afraid to openly confront him. Kevin hadn't been listening to her lately. Kelly invited everyone to the table. David didn't eat much. He pretended to eat more. And Kevin asked David, hadn't you recently arrived in Moscow? Yes, not long ago. Although my grandparents have always lived here, they are native Muscovites. At these words, Kathy's face softened a little. A native Muscovite is something that is not quite native people. She began to listen to the conversation. What do your parents do? My mom is an international class photographer. Her exhibitions were held in many countries. Her pictures are bought by magazines and people for a lot of money. And now for the first time there will be an exhibition in Moscow. And my mom was persuaded for a long time. She didn't agree. Dad insisted. But we thought that Mom would just go to the exhibition, and that's all. But circumstances were such that we had to move here. Kathy asked us right away, where do you live? At my grandparents' for now. But my mom already bought an apartment. It's being renovated. The woman raised an eyebrow. She had nothing against being friends with this guy now. Yes, while Kelly was still young, but it looked like this David was the one to hold on to. Kevin immediately noticed the change of mood in his mother's demeanor, and for some reason he felt very disgusted. David, where's the exhibit? Maybe Kelly and I could come and see it. Oh, come of course. I'll give you and Kelly the invitations tomorrow. You should come. I'll introduce you to my mom. Betty took over the reins from the host for old time's sake. It was decided that Adriana would not be introduced to the guests until the middle of the show. The organization was certainly top-notch. The first day of the exhibition was invite-only. That was the decision of the stewards, and Adriana didn't resist. She understood perfectly well that at first the business was organized light buffet with champagne and wine. People were mostly walking the halls. David, and Adriana's mom could see that people were excited. Now David was very proud of his mom, but also worried because there was still no Kelly. Finally, he saw her and went to greet her. Adriana came out into the hall as well. No one recognizes her because no one knows what she looks like. She walked over to the pictures that were taken years ago. It was Kevin. 10 pictures, none of them showed his face, just a silhouette. But that was the point. After all these years, the photos are still relevant. You look at them, and it's like you're in some kind of novel. I wonder if the man in the photo has something to do with the photographer or just a model? No, of course he does. You said yourself that the photos are as if they were alive. I even think they have a loving air about them. Adriana grinned sadly. That's true. At the moment when she was taking Kevin's picture, she loved him so much that she thought only of happiness. She stepped back, then walked off in the other direction altogether. Adriana could see perfectly well that these pictures always had a lot of people, 10 pictures of happiness. Kathy slowly made her way along the wall. Kevin thoughtfully supported her under his arm. Kevin, you saw and the whole world is here. Of course I did, Mom. I guess you like it a lot, don't you? Of course I do. Would our Kelly be so foolish as to miss such a party? Mom, I'm begging you. What are you talking about? Kelly is just a child. What are you talking about? She's not such a child. Let her think about the future. It doesn't hurt anyone to marry some poor schmuck. Mom, that's enough. Kevin gave her a stern look. It's too early to be thinking about something like that. And then I want you to understand one thing. I'm not going to let you interfere with Kelly's life. It's bad enough you ruined it for me, and Kathy wanted to be outraged. She realized, of course, that Lissa was entirely on her conscience. But on the other hand, Kevin should have been grateful to her for keeping him away from that girl. But she had no time to intervene before she could voice her displeasure either. Kevin suddenly let go of her hand and took a few steps forward. He was looking at the pictures posted on a separate wall. They were large just enough to be seen from anywhere in the hall. Kevin quietly. Kathy looked at her son in surprise and shifted her gaze to where he was looking. Beautiful, very beautiful. Kathy had respected few people in her life. Few people she praised. But these pictures stirred something in her soul. But the more she looked at them, the more she was disturbed. Kevin, I don't understand what's wrong here. Son, what's wrong with you? Kathy, but she saw her son turn pale. Mom, do you know who's in these pictures? No, of course not. How would I know? Kevin didn't notice Kelly and David walking up to them. No one saw the kids yet. They were holding hands. David listened to Kevin with interest. He, too, was seeing these pictures for the first time, though he had always followed his mom's work. Mom, it's me. Many, many years ago, Adriana was taking pictures for a contest. She asked me to select the photos. These are the pictures, and I chose them myself. Kathy looked at her son. Are you saying that's a picture of that girl? But it just can't be. She was a simple person and would never have achieved anything. I can see right through people. Kathy was frantic when she thought of Lisa, but then she went on. What's there to guess? She turned to David, who stood with an impenetrable face. David, what is your mother's name? Only then did she realize what a stupid thing he had said. To come to the exhibition without even asking who the person who had done all this was. My mom's name is Adriana. Kathy stared at David in silence, uncomprehending. Kelly let go of the boy's hand, and Kevin just turned pale. Adriana stood with Betty. Adriana, you're doing great. I thought people were just going to show off to each other today. But after 15 minutes, everyone was looking at your work, and they were talking about it so much. And those old photos over there are always crowded. Look, there's an argument going on right now. David and his Kelly, their Adriana turned that way and suddenly stopped. Her son was standing in front of his own father and the hated Kathy. Oh, Betty, I have to go over there. David, there's Kevin and his mom. Betty darted her eyes how. But Adriana was already rushing over there. Her mind was blank. The last thing she expected was to see people she would rather never see here. She walked over and stood behind Kevin and Kathy. The woman was still indignant. This can't be happening. I'm sure it's just a coincidence. We just need to meet the author of these works. We already have. Kathy, she even jumped up and then only turned around. It's you. Kevin turned even more slowly. He already recognized that voice. He could already hear his heart going crazy, somewhere in Adriana's chest. What it took for her to keep her expression the same as it had been before, no one knows. Hello, Kevin. David raised his eyebrows. Mom, do you two know each other? Yes, son. It's been a long time since we've known these people. I'd like to talk to you. She took her son under her arm and led him away. Kelly stood alone, confused. Kevin stared after Adriana, and Kathy put Valadol under her tongue. Mom, where are you taking me? Kelly's waiting for me. Adriana stopped. She didn't know how to explain everything to her son. Son, I don't want you to go out with Kelly. It's not gonna work out anyway. Mom, what the hell are you talking about? I didn't think you were like that. David, I don't care what you thought. But you have to tell Kelly that you're not going out anymore and that we're going somewhere else. David looked at his mother and just didn't understand what was wrong with her. They always got along, always talked. But here Mom just averted her eyes and repeated the same phrase for the second time. Adriana, what's going on? Adriana's parents, and almost simultaneously, Kevin came up to them. David looks at the man in surprise, and this one does something. Hello, David. Adriana, we need to talk. She looked up at him. I don't need to. So I'm sorry. You better go. She looked out the window. There was already a party going on outside, and David was gone. Finally, the door slammed. He went into the kitchen, turned on the light. Mom, what are you doing out here alone in the dark? David, were you with Kelly? Yeah, we went to the movies. Mom, you don't know her at all. She's great. And if you have a problem with her family, what does that have to do with us? I believe she's great, but you can't date. You can be friends, but that's all you can do. The name David. Kelly is not the right girl for you. Mom, why not? I don't understand. What's wrong with her? Everything about her, that's what's wrong with us. Well, it's you. Mom, you can speak more clearly. David and Kelly had their first kiss today. And David knew there was no force that could pull him and Kelly apart. He couldn't think about anything at all, only the fact that it wouldn't be long now. He and Kelly would be married, and they would be together forever. Adriana could see that her son was on the verge of a nervous breakdown. She realized that she would have to tell the truth. David, Kelly, and you are related. You are brother and sister. And Kevin is your father. A long time ago, he chose money over love. Kathy insulted me and said that someone like me was no good for her son. David looked at his mother in horror. Mom, but I had a dad. You had the most wonderful daddy in the world who loved you more than life. But Kevin's biological father. David jumped up and ran out of the apartment. Adriana rushed after David stopped, but the guy didn't even look behind Adriana. Adriana's parents jumped out. What happened? They waited for David all night. Toward morning, an exhausted Adriana called the police. A sleepy voice told her to come back in 3 days. David put another pill under his tongue. Adriana, we need to call Kevin. He has a lot more opportunity in this town now anyway. Adriana silently picked up the phone. The clock read 5 o'clock. She dialed the number. Who is this, Kevin? It's me, Adriana. On the other end of the phone, Adriana's confusion lasted a second. Is something wrong? Yeah, Kevin's missing David. I told him he can't date Kelly because they're brother and sister. Kevin, help us find our son. Another second of silence. And Kevin said in a husky voice, I'll be right there. He arrived half an hour later. He had some men with him. They took pictures of David, questioned Adriana. What was he wearing? Another half hour later, the doorbell rang. David came back with Kelly. She immediately lashes out at Adriana. I didn't realize you were like this. I really liked you. I could never understand people who forbid their children to be happy. My grandmother told me how badly she and Daddy treated you. But it's despicable to retaliate like that. Adriana even smiled. Good girl. She couldn't say it all back then. But Kelly, even though she's younger, did. Kevin, do you want me to explain to Kelly, or do you? Kevin looked at Kelly darkly. Daughter, here's the thing. David is my son. Kelly went pale. Staggered? No, this can't be happening. We decided to get married as adults. Dad, how can that be? Kevin didn't have time to answer. His cell phone rang in his pocket. Where is it? Don't touch it. We'll be right there. He jumped up and drove on the spot. We'll figure it out. David was sitting on a high railroad bridge. When Adriana saw him, her heart thumped loudly, loudly. If he took just a couple steps down, there was a real abyss and trains. Kelly rushed to him, sat down next to him, and took his hand. David, we can be friends, I guess. And she cried, resting her head on his shoulder. David put one arm around her, pulling her close to him. Kevin sat down too, and Adriana came over. Kevin spoke. We all need to listen to me to unravel this tangle. I'm the only one to blame for what happened all those years ago. I'm the one who was cowardly. The truth is, I didn't know Adriana was having a baby. Mom quickly married me to Lisa. And I thought about Adriana all the time. I couldn't have lived with Lisa if it hadn't been for Kelly. Kelly was everything to me. And then Lisa left, and it turned out she was gone for good. And Kelly gets sick. Remember Kelly, you even had to go to the hospital? I do, the girl exclaimed. And that's where I found out that the girl had a blood type that neither me, Lisa, nor my grandparents had. I don't even know why I took that test. Anyway, I never would have said it. But now I have to. Kelly is not my own daughter. Lisa must have gotten pregnant on purpose to keep me around. Or maybe she didn't even know it wasn't mine. Admittedly, I was being a pig about it. Kelly and David stared at him in amazement, and Kevin continued. Kelly, I'm sorry, but I love you like family. And I really hope nothing changes in our relationship. Here. So there are no obstacles to you and David dating, except for one thing. You're both still in high school. Kelly threw herself on his neck. Daddy, Daddy, thank you. I love you very much and will always consider you my daddy. High schoolers. We actually decided to get married after high school. Kevin remembered her, and then he held her to him and David. Adriana wiped her tears. Mom, come to us. They sat like that for a long time, the four of them hugging each other. And when the sun began to rise, Kevin said decisively, I suggest that we go to the campgrounds this weekend. The four of us, or we could take our parents. I know it's impossible to forgive me, but I'd like to try. Kevin glanced at Adriana. She averted her eyes, but her heart throbbed. Mom, let's take Grandma and Grandpa and Kelly's grandmother too. It had been so long ago after all, you have to learn to live without resentment. Adriana waved her hand. Let's go, son. Of course you're right.